Chapter 667. Wooing was one of the top 10 on the list of top 100 talents in the northern region with pure martial arts. This kind of martial artist was the most terrifying. The path of martial arts was incomparably depressing. Most martial artists would not purely cultivate martial arts. Instead, they would also learn other martial arts techniques. However, if one was able to cultivate to the great accomplishment realm on the path of martial arts, one's strength would truly be incomparably terrifying. Because pure martial arts had no weaknesses at all. Wooing was a pure martial arts cultivator. Only with real strength could one defeat him. As long as one's strength was weaker than Wooing, even if there was only a difference of one level, it would be impossible to defeat him. Chu Fengmian's strength was indeed strong enough to fight against people of a higher level and had countless adventures. But in terms of strength, no one was optimistic about Chu Fengmian. Boom! The power of the two fists suddenly collided in midair. The wanton fist wind and pure strength were crazily intertwined. The countless people below, even those outside of the arena, could feel how powerful the power that erupted from the arena was. Countless eyes were fixed on every move. At the moment when the two fists collided, the figures of the two were also covered by the innumerable spiritual power. It was impossible to see what was happening. Bam! At the next moment, a figure was suddenly sent flying. He retreated dozens of steps before he could stabilize himself. Everyone looked over and saw the person's appearance clearly. Their eyes were filled with horror. The figure who was sent flying was actually Wooing. In a contest of strength, Wooing actually lost. When the spiritual power dissipated, Chu Fengmian stood in the same place. He looked very relaxed, but Wooing retreated a few steps. The result was self-evident. Not bad. In terms of strength, there are not many people who can force me back. Wooing retreated a few steps, and his face suddenly became more serious. He was not a warrior who focused on strength, but in terms of strength, he was enough to surpass warriors of the same level. He was invincible in the same level, not to mention facing Chu Fengmian, who was much lower than him. Unfortunately, with such strength, it's basically impossible for you to survive in my hands. Wooing looked at Chu Fengmian and said with a ferocious expression. With this move, he had already figured out Chu Fengmian's strength. Today, I'll kill you in front of the sacred leader. I'll let everyone else see the consequences of opposing the sacred faction. As soon as Wooing finished speaking, he unleashed his martial arts once again. Then, the power of the martial way once again condensed on Wu Ying's fist wind. Wooing was extremely confident in his own martial arts. He had clearly probed Chu Fengmian's strength during his fight with him. Chu Fengmian was very strong, but Wooing did not use his full strength. Brat, your aptitude is indeed very strong, even surpassing mine. Unfortunately, it's easy to break if you're too rigid. You actually chose to be our enemy. This is the stupidest thing you've ever done in your life. Today, I, Wooing, will strangle a genius like you. Wooing smiled ferociously. His fists suddenly blasted towards Chu Fengmian. This punch was no longer a probing attack. It was a punch that contained true killing intent. Rumble! As soon as the punch was thrown, the whole arena was filled with the sound of thunder. The fist wind was actually divided into thousands of parts. Even waves of supreme pressure were shrouding Chu Fengmian. This punch had turned the surrounding arena into a shroud of martial arts. Every move was shrouded in Wu Ying's martial arts. Under the shroud of martial arts, Chu Fengmian's every move seemed to be greatly affected. At the same time, countless fist wind blasted towards Chu Fengmian from all directions. It seemed that Chu Fengmian had no way to escape at all. This is Wu Ying's martial arts. Wu Ying's martial arts are already enough to turn into pressure. Those who are shrouded in it need to use at least 30% of their strength to resist. Oh, no matter how strong this brat is, how can he still be able to resist Wooing after losing 30% of his strength? This person's realm is still too low. If he had survived the tribulation of life and death, I'm afraid he would still be able to fight against Wooing. But now, all his adventures will become a wedding dress for someone else. Many of the cultivators below could see the situation at a glance. The reason why Wu Wing was almost invincible in the same realm was also because of his martial arts. Unless his opponent was stronger than him, he would be affected by his martial arts, losing 30% of his strength. In a battle of this level, losing 30% of one's strength was already unbeatable. Moreover, Wu Wing didn't give Chu Fengmian any chance at all. The moment his martial arts shrouded Chu Fengmian, his fist wind came one after another. Obviously, he didn't want to give Chu Fengmian any chance to breathe. He wanted to completely kill Chu Fengmian in one move. You want to kill me with such means? I've already given you a chance to attack. Now you can die without regrets. Chu Fengmian looked at Wu Ying's countless fist winds falling. The moment they bombarded Chu Fengmian's body, suddenly, countless golden spiritual energy appeared around Chu Fengmian's body. The golden spiritual energy began to condense and immediately turned into dragon scales. At the same time, Chu Fengmian suddenly let out a roar. A series of dragon roars resounded. The martial arts shrouding Chu Fengmian's martial arts were directly torn apart. Chu Fengmian waved his hand and the countless fist winds were instantly shattered. Dragon dancing in the firmament. Chu Fengmian transformed into an ancient dragon and suddenly soared into the sky. His incomparably huge body suddenly rushed toward Wu Wing. Ah! A scream was heard. Wu Wing tried his best to resist, but in front of Chu Fengmian, he was extremely powerless. Almost in an instant, his body was directly smashed, leaving only a pile of meat paste. In this arena, Wu Wing, who was almost invincible a moment ago, was beaten into a pile of meat paste in an instant. Almost everyone present was stunned. The whole arena was silent. Wu Wing, who ranked 9th on the list of top 100 talents in the northern region, was now a pile of meat paste under Chu Fengmian's move. Originally, Chu Fengmian said that he would give Wu Wing a chance to attack. In the hearts of countless martial artists, this sentence was originally disdainful, as they thought Chu Fengmian was boasting. But now it seemed that Chu Fengmian's words were not exaggerated at all. Chapter 668. 2 moves. Wu Wing was defeated in only 2 moves, and he was defeated so miserably. If Chu Fengmian had used his full strength at the beginning, Wu Wing would not have been able to take 1 move from Chu Fengmian. Chu Fengmian was not boasting. One of the top 10 on the list of top 100 talents in the northern region was killed by Chu Fengmian in 1 move. Killed in 1 move? Wu Wing was a genius who was almost qualified to make it to the top 10 in this year's martial arts competition. He was invincible in the same realm. But now, he was defeated by Chu Fengmian. Chu Fengmian had to be in the top 5 on the list of top 100 talents in the northern region. Is he really a warrior in the divine power realm? Looking at the power that Chu Fengmian displayed, the countless warriors below were dumbfounded. Originally, in their opinion, Chu Fengmian had almost no chance of winning. Chu Fengmian's victory was beyond everyone's expectation, not to mention that he killed Wu Wing in 1 move. His strength was enough to compete with Buried Heaven for the title of the strongest dark horse in this competition. Damn it! In the crowd below, Yi Tianjun was surrounded by countless disciples of the Saint Society like stars surrounding the moon. His face was gloomy to the extreme, and the murderous aura emanating from his body made the countless disciples of the Saint faction extremely fearful. Yi Tianjun had never been this furious before. Although Chu Fengmian had killed many disciples of the sacred faction in the past, none of them had ever made Yi Tianjun so furious. The disciples of the sacred society that Chu Fengmian had killed before were dispensable existences in the sacred society. Although Yi Tianjun was furious, it wasn't enough to make him so angry. However, Wu Wing, who was the strongest expert in the holy society, was killed by Chu Fengmian just like that. Chu Fengmian killed him with a single move without any mercy. I won him. Die! Yi Tianjun growled with a ferocious face. I'll kill him with my own hands. The rest of you, retreat when you see him. Chu Fengmian could kill Wu Wing in 1 move. His strength was not something that the remaining disciples of the Saint Society could deal with. Only Yi Tianjun could deal with Chu Fengmian personally. Yi Tianjuan's eyes were filled with killing intent. He had to kill Chu Fengmian at the martial arts competition. Countless warriors below looked at Chu Fengmian with different expressions. After this battle, no one present dared to look down on Chu Fengmian. The cold-faced demon emperor, Feng Wuxin, and even buried heaven cast their gazes toward him. Their eyes were filled with murderous intent. None of the geniuses were willing to let someone ride on their heads. In this martial arts conference, everyone they met was an enemy. I'm afraid that this person will enter the top 10 in this martial competition. One is buried heaven, and the other is Chu Fengmian. I can't believe there are two dark horses in this year's martial arts conference. Interesting. Chu Fengmian and Yi Tianjun have a great feud. They'll meet each other one day. That'll be the real battle. The countless cultivators below were discussing. Chu Fengmian had killed a disciple of the Saint Society, so Yi Tianjun would not let it go. Moreover, according to the rumors, Chu Fengmian and Yi Tianjun had a feud. The battle between the two was enough to determine who was the number one in Beimang Academy. Countless warriors were looking forward to this battle. The arena battle continued. Chu Fengmian stepped down, and the next battle was Han Yueli's. Han Yueli's opponent was one of the core disciples of Beimang Academy, the girl who had challenged him before, Yan Bai. Almost no words were exchanged. The battle had already begun. Han Yueli attacked without holding back. Suddenly, endless chilling intent emerged, and waves of sword edge slashed toward Yan Bai. Yan Bai was one of the strongest among the core disciples of Beimang's sacred region. Her strength had reached the 4th level of life and death realm, and she was ranked 8th on the list of top 100 talents of Northern region. Compared to the martial superior that Chu Fengmian had killed, she was one rank higher. Facing Han Yueli's countless sword edges, Yan Bai took out a bronze cauldron and repeatedly activated it. The countless sword edges hit the cauldron, but it was not damaged at all. It could withstand Han Yueli's sword edge. This bronze cauldron was a heaven-level spiritual tool. Han Yueli is a new genius of Beimang Academy, someone who had passed through the Thousand Thunder Emperor tribulation. But Yan Bai is not inferior. She had once received the inheritance of common life Shenren from the Saint Hall of Beimang Academy. The cauldron in her hand is the common life cauldron. Although Han Yueli is strong, he might not be able to break the common life cauldron. A venerable standing not far from Chu Fengmian watched the battle in the arena and secretly said, "Common life cauldron?" Chu Fengmian glanced at the arena. The bronze cauldron in Yan Bai's hand contained all kinds of power. It was indeed very strong, as if it was supporting the world. This power was very similar to the human emperor jar in Chu Fengmian's hand. However, the human emperor jar was a spiritual tool refined by the human emperor in ancient times. It could be turned into an extreme immortal weapon, which was far superior to the common life cauldron. However, it wasn't an easy task to break the common life cauldron. Those who can enter the top 10 of the list of top 100 talents of the northern region are indeed not ordinary. Chu Fengmian thought to himself. Although Wu Ying was killed by Chu Fengmian with one punch, his martial arts coercion did not have much effect on Chu Fengmian. Chu Fengmian had the Battle Dragon bloodline, so the martial arts coercion did not have any effect on him. He could defeat Wu Ying with one move. But in terms of martial arts, Wu Ying was definitely stronger than any warrior Chu Fengmian had ever seen. He was even stronger than those geniuses from martial arts families. It was the same for Yan Bai. She possessed a heaven-ranked spiritual artifact. It was indeed not an easy task to break through her defense. However, it was impossible to fight against Han Yueli with just such a spiritual tool. Hiss. Just as Chu Fengmian thought of this, a beam of sword light suddenly burst out from the arena. The sword light on Han Yueli's body suddenly became 10 times stronger. This sword light was 1,000 meters long. It was so huge that it swept across the entire arena. Yan Bai activated the common life cauldron to block it. As the sword light collided, suddenly there was a sound of breaking. The restrictions on the common life cauldron were all broken. In an instant, even Yan Bai was sent flying out of the arena. Chapter 669. Yan Bai's body was sent flying out of the arena and fell outside. According to the rules of the arena battle, this meant that Yan Bai had lost. As long as she left the arena, she would be considered a failure. So powerful. Even a heaven-grade spiritual weapon was broken by this sword light. Another top 10 talent on the list of top 100 talents in the northern region has lost. How is this possible? When the countless warriors below saw Yan Bai being sent flying, they all stood up abruptly. None of them had expected that so many accidents would actually occur in this year's martial arts conference. Chu Fengmian, Han Yueli, and Buried Heaven had all stepped on top of the top 10 talents to enter the next round. It was extremely rare for such a genius to suddenly appear in the previous batches. It was unexpected that 3 of them had actually appeared in one go. This Yan Bai was originally a person who was almost certain to enter the top 10 in this year's competition. However, she was defeated so easily when she met Han Yueli. Even with a heaven-grade spiritual weapon, she was defeated by Han Yueli, senior sister Yan. Countless seed disciples of the northern Mang sacred region immediately surrounded Yan Bai and helped her up. Yan Bai was a famous giant in Beimang sacred domain. They did not expect her to be defeated like this. Her life cauldron was broken and lost 50% of its power. She also lost the qualification to enter the returning ruins heaven. She had paid a huge price. Damn it. Let's go. Yan Bai was helped up. Her eyes were full of resentment. She glanced coldly at Han Yueli and left with countless Beimang sacred domain disciples. Your Ice Lotus swordsmanship is about to reach the profound realm. Chu Fengmian looked at Han Yueli, who had fallen from the arena, and said with a smile. Hearing Chu Fengmian's sudden words, Han Yueli was slightly surprised. Her swordsmanship was about to reach the profound realm. This was her latest comprehension these days. Now that she had just displayed it, Chu Fengmian saw through it directly. This also seemed to surprise her. Seeing Han Yueli's surprise, Chu Fengmian didn't explain anything. Chu Fengmian couldn't be more familiar with the Ice Lotus sword technique. When Han Yueli's swordsmanship improved, Chu Fengmian immediately sensed it. With your ability, apart from Buried Heaven, Yi Tianjun, the cold-faced Demon King, and Feng Wuxin, you should be able to defeat any other opponent. Chu Fengmian glanced at the crowd and said. Among these people, the one you have to be most careful of is Buried Heaven. You can fight the others, but if you encounter Buried Heaven, you can choose to forfeit. When he said this, Chu Fengmian's expression turned serious. Among all the people present, whether it was Yi Tianjun, the cold-faced Devil King, or even Feng Wuxin, who ranked first on the list of top 100 talents in the northern region, Chu Fengmian did not feel as threatened as Buried Heaven. Chu Fengmian could feel it. If Han Yueli encountered these 3 people, he might not necessarily be unable to fight. However, once they encountered Buried Heaven, there was only one outcome: defeat was certain. Okay. Han Yueli nodded, but her expression did not change. She was also one of the dark horses in this year's competition. Chu Fengmian's warning only told her to be careful, but it was impossible for her to give up. Chu Fengmian naturally knew this, but his words were just a reminder. Although Buried Heaven was powerful, Han Yueli should have no problem protecting herself if they encountered each other. Boom! On the arena, another burst of spiritual power wantonly exploded. A martial artist was directly crushed, and this arena battle ended. This round of arena battles had finally come to an end. Other than these 2 battles, there wasn't much to be surprised about in this round. In the next round, it was time to decide the top 10 of this year's martial arts conference. As long as they won this round, they would enter the top 10 of this year's martial arts conference and obtain the qualification to enter the returning ruins heaven. None of the martial artists who could make it to this round were weak. Among them, the weakest one was above the 15th place on the list of top 100 talents in the northern region. Chu Fengmian glanced over and saw that Yi Tianjun, Feng Wuxin, Cold-Faced Demon Emperor, and the others had all advanced to this round. The martial arts conference had begun to enter a white-hot stage. It was getting more and more intense, and countless experts were about to collide. After a short 6 hours of quiet rest, the stage finally opened once again. A new round of battles was about to begin. The moment it began, the identity card in Chu Fengmian's hand lit up. Chu Fengmian was the first to fight for the top 10. Chu Fengmian leaped onto the arena. His opponent this round was none other than the top 1 on the list of top 100 talents in the northern region, Feng Wuxin. It's actually him? Chu Fengmian looked at the opponent in front of him, and his expression changed slightly. The first battle for the top 10 was against the top 1 on the list of top 100 talents in the northern region, Feng Wuxin. Chu Fengmian, you really didn't disappoint me by making it this far. I've been looking forward to fighting with you for a long time, and now my wish has come true. Feng Wuxin looked at Chu Fengmian and suddenly said, I know that your Dragon Clan martial arts technique is actually a cover. Your real identity should be a sword cultivator. Coincidentally, I'm also a sword cultivator. I wonder if you dare to make a bet with me? A bet? Chu Fengmian asked. Bet on what? His identity as a sword cultivator could fool most people, but it could not fool the real experts. Especially since Chu Fengmian had displayed his swordsmanship more than once in Beimang's sacred region, it was not a big deal for Feng Wuxin to know. However, what made Chu Fengmian curious was that Feng Wuxin actually wanted to bet with him. It's the ancestral Dragon Supreme Sword in your hand. Feng Wuxin looked at Chu Fengmian and said confidently, Let's compete in swordsmanship. If I win, the ancestral Dragon Supreme Sword in your hand will belong to me. Sure, but what if you lose? Chu Fengmian's expression did not change after hearing Feng Wuxin's words. Bet on swordsmanship? Chu Fengmian might consider betting on other things. However, Chu Fengmian was never afraid of betting on swordsmanship. He accepted the challenge without any hesitation. However, since it was a bet, Feng Wuxin had to have something on his side. Me? Feng Wuxin was slightly stunned when he heard Chu Fengmian's words, as if he had not thought of this problem. Although he was ranked first on the list of top 100 talents in the northern region, the Feng family was not a big family, and he did not have much wealth. If he wanted to bet on Chu Fengmian's ancestral Dragon Supreme Sword, he must have something of equivalent value. Chapter 670. Feng Wuxin thought for a moment and said coldly, If I lose, I'll dig out my heart and give it to you. My heart is the emperor of the heart, the innate Qilin heart. If I lose, I'll give you the Qilin heart. How about that? That's enough for the bet, isn't it? Qilin heart? The Qilin heart was known as the emperor of the heart. Qilins were divine beasts of heaven and earth. The heart was the foundation of a human being. Having the innate Qilin heart was not inferior to having an innate divine body. It was no wonder that Feng Wuxin was so powerful. He actually had the innate Qilin heart. The Qilin heart is good, but I don't need it. Chu Fengmian suddenly shook his head and said. The innate Qilin heart was indeed a good thing, but Chu Fengmian didn't need it. He had the bloodline of the war dragon. His internal organs were already developing toward the ancient war dragon. Even if the Qilin heart was given to Chu Fengmian, it would be meaningless for him. Integrating it into his body would only allow the two forces in Chu Fengmian's body to compete. The innate Qilin heart was a priceless treasure to others, but it was worthless to Chu Fengmian. What I want in this bet is only your sword technique. If you lose, you'll tell me everything about your sword technique and your understanding of the sword principle. How about that? Chu Fengmian suddenly changed his tone and said. He would never lose this bet. Since that was the case, he might as well ask for some benefits. The innate Qilin heart was meaningless to Chu Fengmian, but Feng Wuxin's sword technique was very useful to him. If Chu Fengmian wanted to condense the 9 realms sword technique, he had to obtain the essence of countless sword techniques. The more powerful the sword technique, the more useful it would be for Chu Fengmian's improvement. Although Feng Wuxin's sword technique had not been revealed yet, Chu Fengmian could already vaguely feel the power of Feng Wuxin's sword technique. His sword technique would be very useful to Chu Fengmian. You only want my sword technique? Feng Wuxin asked in surprise when he heard Chu Fengmian's words. To him, this request was not too high, but too low. The most important thing for a sword cultivator was that his sword technique was good, but in fact, it was meaningless even if other sword cultivators obtained it. This was because an ordinary sword cultivator would not be able to fully comprehend a single sword technique even if they spent their entire lives. People like Bai Xian, who had learned 10,000 sword techniques and combined 10,000 swords into one, were in the minority. No matter how valuable a sword technique was, how could it be compared to the ancestral Dragon Supreme Sword? Is Chu Fengmian out of his mind? He only wants Feng Wuxin's swordsmanship? Feng Wuxin's innate Qilin heart is comparable to an innate divine body if he can get his hands on it. Yet, this person doesn't want it. Instead, he wants a sword technique? This kid is really stupid. Everyone looked at Chu Fengmian as if they were looking at a fool. This was simply throwing away a watermelon and picking up sesame seeds. They couldn't understand Chu Fengmian's behavior. Feng Wuxin glanced at Chu Fengmian and said slowly, "Is what you said true? You don't regret it?" "Of course." Chu Fengmian nodded and laughed. "In any case, I won't lose." "What exactly is this bet?" "I naturally won't regret it," Chu Fengmian said casually. His voice was filled with indescribable confidence. "You're no match for me. I advise you to obediently admit defeat now." Chu Fengmian's words were transmitted from the arena and caused an uproar. Obediently admit defeat? Let Feng Wuxin go? Feng Wuxin was the number one among the younger generation in the northern region. Let him admit defeat? No one dared to say such a thing. This was no longer arrogance. This was madness. How dare he provoke Feng Wuxin at a time like this? Arrogant. Feng Wuxin's expression changed when he heard Chu Fengmian's words. "Chu Fengmian, you're no match for me. Your swordsmanship is not worth mentioning at all in front of me." Feng Wuxin was also angered by Chu Fengmian's words. He was the number one on the list of top 100 talents in the northern region. So what if Chu Fengmian's strength was strong? Feng Wuxin had never thought that he would lose this battle. The number one in the northern region. He would never lose. Lose? Feng Wuxin's palm moved and a spiritual sword suddenly appeared in his palm. This spiritual sword was extremely thin and long, like a sword radiance, but the spiritual power it contained had reached the heaven grade. "Chu Fengmian, you have the ancestral Dragon Supreme Sword, but do you think I don't have a heaven grade spiritual weapon? Even if your swordsmanship is slightly better than mine, your sword principle is far from comparable to mine." The sword in his hand suddenly moved and slashed down with extreme speed. The surrounding space began to distort heavily. This sword was directly hidden in countless spacetimes, making it impossible to detect its existence at a glance. It seemed that this sword was thousands of miles away from Chu Fengmian, but in the next moment, it appeared in front of Chu Fengmian in an instant. The change in an instant was shockingly fast. Feng Wuxin's swordsmanship had reached the level of distorting space. His swordsmanship was more exquisite than anyone Chu Fengmian had ever met in this life. Possessing the innate Qilin heart meant that one's aptitude had reached the pinnacle. Even a martial arts aristocratic family couldn't compare with Feng Wuxin's swordsmanship. He was able to stand as the number one in the northern region because of his swordsmanship. What a fast sword! Feng Wuxin's casual slash is so fast that even ghosts and gods can't block it. Many of the spectators below couldn't even see the edge of Feng Wuxin's sword clearly. It was so fast that ordinary people couldn't even see it clearly, let alone block it. The number one in the northern region lived up to his reputation. Feng Wuxin didn't hold back at all in this swordsmanship. If Chu Fengmian hadn't made a bet and Feng Wuxin hadn't used his full strength, he might have been lucky enough to defeat Chu Fengmian. But now, Feng Wuxin is serious and can't be defeated. Yi Tianjun muttered to himself as he watched the scene in the arena. It's a pity that this person lost to Feng Wuxin. Otherwise, I would have killed him with my own hands if he had fallen into my hands. Yi Tianjun wasn't the only one who shook his head. Countless onlookers shook their heads. Such a strong dark horse could have gone one step further and entered the top 10. But now, it seemed that Chu Fengmian's victory would come to an end here. Chu Fengmian couldn't pass Feng Wuxin's challenge. Chapter 671. Feng Wuxin's sword slashed toward Chu Fengmian in an instant. There was no suspense in this battle from the moment the bet was made. If Feng Wuxin wasn't serious, he might really be defeated by Chu Fengmian. However, Feng Wuxin was already completely serious about this battle. A serious Feng Wuxin was the true number one in the northern region. How could he lose? Many people even felt that this sword light was enough to determine the outcome of the battle. Whether or not Chu Fengmian could withstand this sword light was still unknown. Good swordsmanship. Chu Fengmian's mind flickered and the ancestral Dragon Supreme sword suddenly appeared in his hand. Even Chu Fengmian's face showed a little seriousness. This was the first time Chu Fengmian's swordsmanship had reached a good level. Feng Wuxin's swordsmanship was extremely outstanding among sword cultivators of the same level in the 9 regions. It was even comparable to some of the geniuses cultivated by the 7 major sections. However, Chu Fengmian would never lose in a battle of swordsmanship. Sword. The moment Feng Wuxin's sword light landed in front of Chu Fengmian also moved. His figure was extremely fast and he instantly slashed out with his sword. The sword chi was 100 meters long and collided with Feng Wuxin's sword edge. Feng Wuxin's sword edge was torn apart layer by layer. It was blocked. Feng Wuxin's sword was blocked by Chu Fengmian. Being able to block Feng Wuxin's sword, at least Chu Fengmian was qualified to stand in the top 5 of the list of top 100 talents in the northern region. However, this was far from enough to satisfy Chu Fengmian. Slash. After tearing apart Feng Wuxin's sword edge, Chu Fengmian's sword chi went straight for Feng Wuxin. Not only did he have to block Feng Wuxin's sword, but he also had to counterattack and turn the situation around. When the sword chi slashed out, there was a hissing sound in the arena. Obviously, the sharpness of the sword almost tore the surrounding space apart. The sword light flashed and in the next moment, it slashed in front of Feng Wuxin. Good! Feng Wuxin let out a hearty laugh. Without the slightest bit of fear, he charged forward with his spiritual sword in hand. As soon as his sword moved, it split into thousands of fragments. The surrounding space had turned into a world of swords. His sword principle had reached the point where he could create a world with a single sword. The sky was filled with swords, and they continuously slashed at Chu Fengmian's sword chi from all directions. Chu Fengmian's sword chi was directly broken and dissolved by him. At this moment, Chu Fengmian was at an absolute disadvantage. Break! Chu Fengmian spat out a single word indifferently. Just as the sword aura that filled the sky was about to strike, all of a sudden, the sword in Chu Fengmian's hand split into tens of thousands of sword auras. The sword auras even condensed into ancient era's battle dragons that roared in the arena. Boom! All of Feng Wuxin's sword chi was devoured and destroyed by the primordial war dragon. Not a single sword chi managed to escape. Sword world. Sword light flashed all over the sky. Waves of sword light that contained destructive power were already slashing at Feng Wuxin. This move was Chu Fengmian's newest understanding, sword world. It was a world formed by combining the power of his primordial war dragon and his 9-realm sword principle. The sword was the dragon, and the dragon was the sword. It was a world formed by the sword will that filled the sky. What kind of sword principle is this? Dragon power sword principle? Combining the two into one? How is this possible? Looking at the sword world before him, Feng Wuxin's eyes were wide open as he muttered to himself. This was simply beyond his understanding. The sword principle was an incomparably mysterious path. Not to mention changing the sword principle, being able to fully comprehend the sword principle was already a difficult task. Now that Chu Fengmian had combined the dragon power and sword principle into one, it was simply beyond his imagination. He had never imagined that Chu Fengmian's sword principle had reached such a level. Only those who had reached the peak of the sword principle, the ever-changing realm, could combine the two into one. This realm, which was almost legendary, was extremely far away from Feng Wuxin. But now, it was vividly displayed in Chu Fengmian's hands. How is this possible? How can someone surpass Feng Wuxin in the sword principle? Yi Tianjun looked at the changes in the arena and suddenly smashed the throne he was sitting on into pieces. He immediately stood up. Among the younger generation of the northern region, Feng Wuxin's sword principle could only be described with one word. It was invincible. In the northern region, no one in the past 100 or even 1,000 years could surpass Feng Wuxin's sword principle in the same realm. Now, Feng Wuxin's swordsmanship had been surpassed by Chu Fengmian just like that. Chu Fengmian had even crushed Feng Wuxin. This made countless cultivators widen their eyes. They all thought that they were dreaming. For a moment, there was complete silence. No one could react. To be able to surpass Feng Wuxin in sword principle, Chu Fengmian's strength was probably enough to compete for first place in this martial competition. A newcomer who had just emerged unexpectedly had the strength to take first place. If this didn't happen in front of everyone's eyes, who would believe it? Feng Wuxin, I've said before that you're no match for me in sword principle. Chu Fengmian looked at Feng Wuxin and said casually. With your sword principle, you may be qualified to fight me after 100 years of diligent cultivation. But now, you're still not enough. Chu Fengmian's words were engraved into the hearts of countless spectating martial artists. For a moment, no one could refute. They could only accept it wholeheartedly. Chu Fengmian had previously said that Feng Wuxin's sword principle was inferior to his. Even if he kept his word, it would be impossible for him to reverse the situation under such circumstances. Feng Wuxin hadn't lost yet, but Chu Fengmian still had a trick up his sleeve. If Chu Fengmian had been more ruthless, Feng Wuxin would have been defeated. Impossible. I don't believe that your sword principle is really that powerful. Feng Wuxin stood up, his face showing some tenacity. I won't admit defeat even if I die. Wind annihilation. Feng Wuxin operated his sword principle. All of his sword principle was integrated into the blade in his hand. It condensed into the final sword. Feng Wuxin's lifetime of sword skills were vaguely displayed in this sword attack. Come. Chu Fengmian stood where he was, holding the ancestral dragon sword. He didn't move at all, waiting for Feng Wuxin to come and condense the final sword. Such a determined sword principle was worthy of Chu Fengmian's respect. Annihilate. Feng Wuxin shouted in a low voice. The word annihilate seemed to have used up all of his strength. Soaring sword principle was displayed from Feng Wuxin's body. All of his strength was integrated into the final sword. 7-colored sword light that was 10,000 meters long and scorching sword light was enough to sweep through and crush everything. Chapter 672. The streak of light had used up all of Feng Wuxin's power. All of his spiritual power had been integrated into the sword. The moment the sword was slashed out, Feng Wuxin's body fell to the ground as if he had lost all of his strength. Only the 10,000-meter-long rainbow sword ray was left. It descended from the sky and blasted toward Chu Fengmian. This wasn't Feng Wuxin's last attack. Even if he was going to lose, he still wanted to challenge Chu Fengmian with this attack. Good timing. Chu Fengmian whispered to himself. Suddenly, the sword in his hand moved. The moment he swung the ancestral dragon supreme sword, a dragon's roar resounded. A beam of sword light shot up to the sky as Chu Fengmian's sword slashed toward the sky. Buzz! The moment the sword light shot up to the sky, the rainbow-colored sword light suddenly trembled. Their sword daos seemed to have completely fused into the sword, intertwining and colliding with each other. In the next moment, the sword light that Chu Fengmian slashed out suddenly became extremely dazzling. The true power within it was released in an instant. Bam! The rainbow-colored sword radiance was directly shattered. Feng Wuxin's body was sent flying as the rainbow sword ray was shattered. Chu Fengmian suddenly grabbed Feng Wuxin's body with his big hand, and only then did he safely land on the arena. How is it? Chu Fengmian looked at Feng Wuxin and said with a smile. I told you that you're no match for me in terms of sword principle. I'm impressed. Your sword principle has indeed far surpassed mine. Feng Wuxin barely managed to stabilize his body. He looked at Chu Fengmian and sighed. I thought that my sword principle was invincible in the northern region. I didn't expect it to be so inferior in front of you. Feng Wuxin suddenly waved his hand, and a jade talisman flew toward Chu Fengmian. This is my sword technique and all of my sword principle comprehension. I, Feng Wuxin, am a man of my word. I've lost this battle, but I'll challenge you again in 3 years. Feng Wuxin left these words and jumped off the arena, admitting defeat. Very well. Chu Fengmian nodded calmly. Although Feng Wuxin was arrogant, he was a man of his word. Such a person was extremely rare among martialists. At the very least, Feng Wuxin had willingly handed over the swordsmanship, and had not been forced to do so. 3 years later, if Feng Wuxin wanted to challenge him, Chu Fengmian would still give him the chance. Feng Wuxin was actually defeated. There really is someone who can surpass Feng Wuxin in the way of the sword. The countless people below could not help but sigh as they watched Feng Wuxin voluntarily concede defeat and leave the stage. They had clearly witnessed Feng Wuxin's complete and utter defeat in this battle. Chu Fengmian had indeed far surpassed Feng Wuxin in the way of the sword. This Chu Fengmian is a true monster. How many years has it been since someone like him appeared in the northern region? Even Feng Wuxin has been defeated. Who else can stop him? It seems that all the rumors about this person are true. Only by obtaining Lord Bei Mang's inheritance can he possibly achieve such terrifying sword Dao at such a young age. It's a fierce battle. One is Chu Fengmian, and the other is Yi Tianjun. The top 2 in the Northern Mang Academy belong to these two. Exclamations rang out as countless eyes looked at Chu Fengmian. There was no longer any mockery from before, only respect. Only with strength would one be respected. Chu Fengmian's strength was no longer that of a newcomer's dark horse. He was a true powerhouse, a powerhouse worthy of everyone's respect. Feng Wuxin has been defeated, but that's just as well. If he had left so early, I would have been disappointed. Buried Heaven looked at Chu Fengmian and muttered to himself coldly. The next battle was between Buried Heaven and an Earth Demon sect disciple. There was almost no suspense in this battle. It was Buried Heaven's victory. Chu Fengmian watched the battle from below. Buried Heaven's victory was clean and tidy. It was almost a crushing victory as he advanced to the next round. His opponent did not pose any threat to him at all. He did not even feel like he was being serious. He was able to achieve this even though he had concealed most of his strength. To these geniuses of the northern region, challenging someone of a higher level might not be a big deal. However, to be able to achieve this while concealing most of his strength was somewhat shocking. Even Chu Fengmian could not see through Buried Heaven's origin. The following battles were not surprising. Yi Tianjun, Cold-Faced Demon King, and Han Yueli also made it into the top 10. Only Feng Wuxin was defeated outside of the top 10. This was not a small surprise. However, the strength that Chu Fengmian displayed was indeed surpassing Feng Wuxin's in Sword Dao. He did not use any tricks, so no one was unconvinced by his advancement. Entering the top 10 meant that one had obtained the right to enter the Omega Sky. However, the remaining battles were equally important. The remaining battles were not for the right to enter the Omega Sky, but for reputation. They wanted to know who would be the strongest person in the northern region in this martial arts conference. This year's champion should be born from Chu Fengmian, Han Yueli, Buried Heaven, Feng Wuxin, and Cold-Faced Demon King. The elder from the sky-piercing pavilion looked down and murmured. This year's champion should still belong to our Earth Demon sect. The man in red next to the elder from the sky-piercing pavilion, Merciless Tyrant, said coldly. No matter how strong these 3 fellows from the North Sea Academy are, they can't possibly be a match for our Earth Demon sect. As for Buried Heaven, he's just a guy who hides his head and shows his tail. He doesn't even dare to reveal his identity. There's no need to care about such a person. Oh? The elder from the sky-piercing pavilion was surprised to hear Merciless Tyrant's words. You're so confident that cold-faced kid can defeat these people? Chu Fengmian and Han Yueli are not easy to deal with. Yi Tianjuan's strength has skyrocketed after obtaining Rui Zi's cave abode. None of them are weak. Just watch. These so-called geniuses are nothing but stepping stones for our Earth Demon sect. Merciless Tyrant did not explain. He said coldly and continued to stand on the spectator's stand, looking down. Below, the audience rested for about 2 hours. It was time to prepare for the arena battles for the top 10. The arena battles for the top 10 would be the climax of the martial arts conference. Everyone wanted to see who was the strongest person in the northern region this year. Chapter 673. 2 hours passed quickly. The silence around the arena gradually became lively. The real battle for the top 10 was about to begin. The battle for the top 10. Start now. The winner will advance and the loser will be eliminated. The elder from Sky-Reaching Pavilion stood on the highest platform and announced in a majestic voice. The first opponent is Chu Fengmian from Northern Sea Academy versus the cold-faced Demon King from Earth Demon Sect. It was Chu Fengmian's turn again. Chu Fengmian's body moved and landed on the arena. Opposite Chu Fengmian, his opponent was the number 1 person in the Earth Demon Sect, the cold-faced Demon Monarch. Chu Fengmian started to size up the cold-faced Demon King. The cold-faced Demon King's position in Earth Demon Sect was equivalent to Yi Tianjuan's position in Northern Sea Academy. It could even be said that his position in Northern Sea Academy was higher than Yi Tianjuan's. Although Yi Tianjun was the number 1 person in Northern Sea Academy, not everyone obeyed his orders. However, the cold-faced Demon King was the number 1 person in Earth Demon Sect among the younger generation. No one in Earth Demon Sect's younger generation had failed to subdue him. The warriors in Earth Demon Sect were all arrogant and unruly. To be able to do this, the cold-faced Demon King's strength was much more terrifying than one could imagine. Facing the cold-faced Demon King, Chu Fengmian did not underestimate him. This person was definitely a formidable opponent. You're Chu Fengmian. You've killed many disciples of Earth Demon Sect. You're just a nameless brat, yet you've secretly killed many disciples of Earth Demon Sect. Looks like you're planning to go against Earth Demon Sect to the end? The cold-faced Demon King looked at Chu Fengmian and said coldly. Chu Fengmian had killed many disciples of the Earth Demon Sect, so he was naturally aware of these matters. Aren't you going to give us an explanation today? Explanation? Chu Fengmian's lips curled into a mocking smile. You're just a bunch of little devils that escaped from Nine Demon City. Why do I need to give you an explanation? Let's not talk about killing a few little devils. Even if those old bastards from Nine Demon City come, I'll still kill them. Chu Fengmian's words were extremely cold. In the face of the cold-faced Demon Monarch's words, he did not sound weak at all. In fact, he sounded extremely domineering. As for the Earth Demon Sect's disciples, so what if they were killed? There were many people who dared to kill the Earth Demon Sect's disciples. But daring to say such words in front of the cold-faced Demon Monarch was simply a provocation that didn't put the Earth Demon Sect in its eyes. Countless Earth Demon Sect's disciples below were enraged when they heard Chu Fengmian's words. Their murderous intents were directed at Chu Fengmian, as if they couldn't wait to tear Chu Fengmian into pieces. Arrogant. Kill him. After killing our Earth Demon Sect's disciples, you still dare to be so arrogant. He's not putting our Earth Demon Sect in his eyes. He's provoking our Earth Demon Sect's prestige. Kill. You're an enemy of our Earth Demon Sect. All of you must die. Countless disciples of the Earth Demon Sect were shouting crazily, their killing intent soaring to the sky. If it weren't for the fact that they couldn't participate in the arena battle, they would have attacked together and killed Chu Fengmian. Good, you're arrogant enough. It's been a long time since an arrogant kid dared to provoke our Earth Demon Sect. But Chu Fengmian, the more arrogant you are, the more miserable your death will be. The cold-faced Demon Monarch said coldly. I know all about your adventures. You've only obtained the inheritance of Dragon Emperor Yan Gu, and the inheritance of sage Biming in the Saint Hall of the Biming Academy. Although your adventures are good, you're still just an ant in front of me. The cold-faced demon monarch's face changed, revealing a ferocious expression. I'll suppress you and lock you in purgatory. I'll torture you so that you'll be in endless pain forever. You're quite good at boasting. But do you think you can defeat me with just you alone? Chu Fengmian said calmly. Since you're a genius nurtured by the Earth Demon sect, I'll kill you first, you little devil. You're quite arrogant. I'd like to see if you'll still be so stubborn when I suppress you. The cold-faced demon monarch sneered. Before his voice died away, he suddenly attacked. Monstrous demonic will was displayed in an instant. The demonic will was shockingly dense. Suddenly, the sky above the arena changed color, and the surroundings of the arena seemed to have turned into a demonic domain. The demonic will was everywhere in the sky and on the ground. The cold-faced demon monarch's figure suddenly disappeared in the demonic will. He was just behind the demonic will, and no one could see his figure. Demonic will filling the sky. Boundless demonic will suddenly rush down from the sky, bombarding Chu Fengmian. The cold-faced demon monarch's control over the demonic will had reached the most exquisite level. Obviously, he had fallen deeply into the demonic will and had truly turned into a demonic will. The demonic will seemed harmless, but once it spread around Chu Fengmian, the cold-faced demon monarch could activate his power at any time, bombarding Chu Fengmian from all directions. His cultivation technique allowed him to hide in the demonic will. It could be said that as long as he still had the demonic will, he could hide forever and be invincible. Moreover, he could launch a sneak attack from all directions at any time. It would be fine if he was outside, because he could choose to retreat temporarily. However, the arena was only so big, and there was nowhere to retreat. He could only fight head-on. Compared to outside, the cold-faced demon monarch in the arena was much more difficult to deal with. The demonic will had gradually shrouded Chu Fengmian's body. Once he was enveloped, Chu Fengmian would be in real danger, and he could be defeated at any time. How dare this puny demonic path be so arrogant in front of me? Facing the demonic will, Chu Fengmian stood in the same place, his expression unchanged. Suddenly, he let out a roar. This roar was an extremely clear dragon's roar, resounding across the arena. The dragon's roar was heard. The demonic will that shrouded Chu Fengmian suddenly dissipated, and it was directly broken. His dragon's roar was the best way to restrain the demonic will, and it shattered the surrounding demonic will. The demonic will dissipated. The cold-faced demon monarch's body was directly shaken out. Dragon! The battle dragon claw instantly condensed in front of Chu Fengmian, and it suddenly slashed out. Demon Sky Claw! The cold-faced demon monarch's body was shaken out, and his expression did not change at all. Suddenly, his hands turned blood-red, and two blood-red sharp claws clashed with the battle dragon claw. Chapter 674. Two incomparably huge claws collided in the air above the arena. As soon as the two of them started fighting, they did not test each other at all and used their true strength. The two blood-red claws clashed with the battle dragon's claw. They were actually on par with the battle dragon's claw. The cold-faced demon lord's strength is indeed terrifying. His strength is comparable to Chu Fengmian's. When the crowd below saw this scene, many of them sighed with emotion. Chu Fengmian's strength had been displayed incisively and vividly in the previous arena battles. It was absolutely overbearing. The cold-faced demon lord's strength was comparable to Chu Fengmian's. Moreover, the cold-faced demon lord's strength was not his own strength. The martial artists of the Earth Demon sect had never been able to overwhelm their opponents in terms of strength. Each of them had countless strange trump cards in their hands. If Chu Fengmian does not have the upper hand in terms of strength, he will be in trouble in this battle. A martial artist observed the situation and said calmly. The cold-faced demon lord's means are different from other martial artists. The number of secret techniques in his hands is frightening and the strength is similar. However, Chu Fengmian is just a newcomer after all. In terms of accumulation, he is definitely not comparable to the cold-faced demon lord. Even though Chu Fengmian is a genius, he is still inferior to the cold-faced demon lord. The current situation was still 50-50. However, Chu Fengmian's strength, which was one of his two strongest points, was already meaningless. Chu Fengmian's remaining strength was his sword principle. Although Chu Fengmian might still have some trump cards, the cold-faced demon lord's trump cards were definitely not lesser than Chu Fengmian's. Your strength is only SOSO. The cold-faced demon lord looked at Chu Fengmian and said coldly. Let's see how you are going to take this move of mine. Demon shakes the 9 heavens. The cold-faced demon lord suddenly attacked. The spiritual energy in his body was rapidly mobilized and condensed on the wind of his fist. Suddenly, he threw out a punch. The surrounding space was shaken by the punch. The monstrous demonic intent was thrown out along with the punch. The space seemed to be torn apart, leaving a tunnel that allowed the power of the punch to pour out. The wind of the punch swept up the billowing demonic intent and bombarded Chu Fengmian at the same time. The sky was filled with demonic shadows. Countless phantoms of primordial demons were condensed, praying and adding to the strength of the punch. The cold-faced demon monarch's strength was 10 times stronger than usual when he punched out. Demon shakes the 9 heavens. This is the demon lord's demon shakes the 9 heavens. The cold-faced devil monarch's strength was originally on par with Chu Fengmian's. Chu Fengmian won't be able to resist this time. Unless Chu Fengmian attacks with his sword. But once he does, Chu Fengmian will have no trump cards left. Demon shakes the demon lord's demon shakes the demon lord. How is that possible? Demon shocking the 9 heavens is a secret technique that can increase one's strength by 10 times. There are very few secret techniques that can reach this level in the Northern Mang Academy, but this person definitely doesn't have one. The punch condensed by Demon shakes the 9 heavens was 10 times the strength of the cold-faced demon lord. The cold-faced demon lord's strength was already close to the peak of life and death realm. Now that he used this secret technique, his strength was 10 times stronger. This punch was simply unstoppable. Countless people looked at Chu Fengmian. If Chu Fengmian didn't use his sword arts, it would be impossible for him to block this attack. 10 times the strength? It's nothing special. It's just an ordinary secret technique. Suddenly, the power in Chu Fengmian's body skyrocketed. His body turned into an ancient war dragon in the air. The dragon scales on his body shone and formed a huge array, supporting Chu Fengmian with its power. In an instant, Chu Fengmian's strength also skyrocketed by 10 times. Break! Rumble! The huge ancient battle dragon's body suddenly moved and blasted out with the demon shakes the demon lord's demon shakes. When the two forces collided, the violent spiritual energy was enough to tear everything in the surroundings apart. Even though this battle was taking place in the arena, many of the warriors below subconsciously took a step back, afraid that they would be affected. In a collision of such a level of power, once one was affected by the shockwaves, only death awaited one. Ka. This demonic punch was shattered layer by layer in front of the primordial war dragon. At the same time, the force of the aftershock also spread to the surroundings. Countless ancient demons that were formed by the demonic will were directly destroyed. The power of this punch was easily blocked by Chu Fengmian. It seemed that he did not even use much strength. How strong is this person? This punch was actually blocked so easily? Originally, I thought that this person would not have the time to study secret techniques after obtaining so many fortuitous encounters. Even if he obtained a secret technique, it would take a lot of effort to study it thoroughly. How did this person do it? Many people couldn't believe that Chu Fengmian was able to block the cold-faced devil monarch's attack. What other tricks do you have? Bring them all out. The Earth Demon Sect is a branch of the 9 Demon City. Don't tell me that this is all you have. Chu Fengmian's body moved and descended from the sky, reverting back to his original appearance. With the strength of the ancient battle dragon body, it was easy for him to increase his strength tenfold. However, Chu Fengmian had to control the strength of the battle dragon bloodline to a certain extent. His Dragon Clan martial skills were all applied to Dragon Emperor Yan Gu. Everyone thought that Chu Fengmian's fortuitous encounter was from Dragon Emperor Yan Gu. However, in fact, Chu Fengmian's Dragon Clan martial skills were not from Dragon Emperor Yan Gu. Chu Fengmian only obtained the ancestral Dragon Supreme Sword and the Blood Sea from Dragon Emperor Yan Gu. His Dragon Clan martial skills were all derived from the Battle Dragon skill. If Chu Fengmian used them too many times, it was very likely that other experts would notice that something was wrong. After all, the martial competition was a grand occasion in the northern region. There were countless experts who were hiding and watching. The secret of Chu Fengmian's Battle Dragon skill must not be exposed. This was the root of everything about Chu Fengmian. Once it was exposed, Chu Fengmian would face endless disasters. If you don't dare to take action, then you won't have the chance to do so. Chu Fengmian roared and suddenly moved. He gathered the power of the Battle Dragon and the Battle Dragon Claw appeared again, descending from the sky. Chapter 675. Who knew how many trump cards this cold-faced demon monarch still had? Chu Fengmian did not want to waste any more time. The Battle Dragon Claw once again bombarded the cold-faced demon monarch. Very well, kid. Do you really think you have what it takes to contend with me? I've only used a small part of my strength. You're indeed strong, but you'll still lose in front of me. Suddenly, waves of spiritual power surrounded the cold-faced demon monarch. It formed a demonic will hurricane, which completely shrouded his figure. Ancient runes suddenly appeared around the demonic intent hurricane like a restriction. Then, the cold-faced demon monarch bellowed furiously. All of these runes suddenly shattered. As the runes shattered, the cold-faced demon monarch's aura suddenly soared by more than 10 times. Billowing demon will was emitted from his body. The shattering of these runes seemed to have unlocked the cold-faced demon monarch's shackles, allowing him to display his true strength. Life and Death Realm. This is the power of the Life and Death Realm. The cold-faced demon monarch has actually passed the life and death tribulation. He hid his strength so well. He actually used a secret technique to seal off this power. I didn't expect him to have already passed the life and death tribulation. It's too scary. The cold-faced demon monarch actually hid such strength. When he was in the divine power realm, he was already strong enough to compete for the title of number 1 in the northern region. Now that he has passed the life and death tribulation, his strength has soared by more than 10 times. Many people were shocked by the cold-faced demon monarch's terrifying aura. At the peak of the divine power realm, the cold-faced demon monarch ranked second on the list of top 100 talents of the northern region. He was qualified to compete for the title of number 1 in the northern region. No one would have thought that this was only a small part of the cold-faced demon monarch's strength. His true strength was that he had already passed the life and death tribulation. This was his true strength. The strength he had displayed before was only a small part of it. The cold-faced demon monarch who had only displayed a small part of his strength was an absolute giant, let alone now that his strength had soared by more than 10 times. Vaguely, everyone felt that the cold-faced demon monarch's strength was even stronger than the life and death realm. It was as if he had transcended life and death realm. This is. On the spectator's stand, the elder from the sky-reaching pavilion was shocked when he saw the sudden change in the cold-faced demon monarch. Even he had not expected this to happen. It was no wonder that merciless tyrant was so confident in the cold-faced demon monarch when he spoke. It turned out that the latter had long passed the tribulation of life and death and reached the life and death realm. The depth of this concealment was something that no one had ever imagined. This is bad. The two of them are both at the divine force realm, so Chu Fengmian still has the capability to fight against them. However, when facing someone at the life and death realm, no matter how strong his sword arts are, it'd be difficult for him to reverse the power of several tens of times. The Skyspan Pavilion's patriarch muttered to himself. Beside him, merciless tyrant was sneering as he looked at Chu Fengmian like a dead man. The cold-faced demon lord had already displayed his true strength. Only death awaited Chu Fengmian. What a pity. Chu Fengmian, you were arrogant for a moment, but you didn't expect that I've already passed the tribulation of life and death and reached the life and death realm. The demonic intent exuding from the demon lord's body made him look like a supreme demon god. He looked down at Chu Fengmian and spoke arrogantly. I originally planned to use this move against Yi Tianjun at the last moment. Now that I've exposed it for you, you should be honored. Among the younger generation, you're the first one to force me to this step. But today, you'll still die. The cold-faced demon monarch looked at Chu Fengmian with a mocking smile. If you kill yourself now, I'll leave your corpse intact. Otherwise, I'm afraid you won't even have an intact corpse when I attack. Is that so? Chu Fengmian looked at the cold-faced demon monarch's arrogance with a calm expression. However, the ancestral dragon supreme sword suddenly unsheathed in his hand. Chu Fengmian said indifferently. No matter how strong you are, you'll still die under my sword today. You're courting death. The cold-faced demon monarch sneered. Today, I'll show you the difference between you and me. You're just an ant in front of me. The cold-faced demon monarch raised his hand as he spoke. The moment he raised his hand, an incomparably huge pressure instantly engulfed the entire arena. With the cold-faced demon monarch's current strength, every move of his was filled with tremendous pressure. Kneel down. The cold-faced demon monarch roared and attacked again. His palm fell, and suddenly, it fell from the sky together with the incomparably huge pressure, oppressing Chu Fengmian. The power of this palm made people feel as if they were standing in front of an incomparably huge mountain. It was as if they were standing in front of an incomparably tall mountain peak. The strength of a human was extremely insignificant in front of this mountain. The power that erupted from his body seemed to want to crush everyone alive. Chu Fengmian couldn't help but smile when he felt the pressure. Usually, he was the one who suppressed others with his aura. He didn't expect that someone would want to suppress him and make him kneel down. However, Chu Fengmian wasn't the same as those who were suppressed by him. In the 9 regions, there wasn't anyone who could suppress Chu Fengmian in the past, and there still wasn't anyone. Sword! Chu Fengmian shouted and the ancestral dragon supreme sword in his hand moved. Chu Fengmian could feel his anger from the ancestral dragon supreme sword. The ancestral dragon supreme sword was the supreme treasure of the dragon clan. This kind of pressure was enough to infuriate him. In an instant, Chu Fengmian attacked with his sword. The sword flashed and slashed towards the sky. The sword chi was like a rainbow that soared into the sky. In an instant, it became 1,000 meters long. The power contained in it turned into the shape of ancient battle dragons that surrounded the sword. Boom! The sword slashed the sky. The power of the palm was directly split into 2. The power contained in this seemingly ordinary sword was enough to split the sky. The entire arena was trembling, and a faint hissing sound could be heard. It was as if the entire arena was about to be sliced apart by this sword. Humph! I'd like to see how many times your sword can break. The cold-faced demon monarch looked at Chu Fengmian's sword with confidence. So what if the sword was strong? In the face of absolute power, even the most amazing sword principle could be crushed. He wanted to crush Chu Fengmian's sword principle with absolute power. Chapter 676. Cold-faced demon monarch said as he sent out another palm strike. The power of this palm strike was much stronger than the previous one. The cold-faced demon monarch's current power was almost at the peak of the life and death realm. Although he hadn't reached the point of transcending the life and death realm, he was still an invincible figure among the younger generation. When the cold-faced demon monarch was still in the divine force realm, he and Yi Tianjun represented the strongest of the younger generation in the North region. Now that the cold-faced demon monarch had passed the life and death tribulation, his strength had skyrocketed. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to call him the strongest person in the North region. Chu Fengmian's strength is indeed astonishing. He can resist to this extent with sword intent. However, sword intent is ultimately inferior to true strength. If this continues, he'll definitely lose. It's already not easy to block the cold-faced demon monarch's attack. Chu Fengmian has already entered the top 10 and obtained a spot to enter the sinkhole sky. Giving up now is the best choice. If this continues, I'm afraid he'll die at the hands of the cold-faced demon monarch. Give up. As long as Chu Fengmian enters the sinkhole sky and obtains some fortuitous encounters, his strength might not be below the cold-faced demon monarchs in the future. Countless martial artists below began to discuss Chu Fengmian. In their opinion, Chu Fengmian's best choice was to admit defeat. Chu Fengmian had already entered the top 10. Even if he admitted defeat now, he could still obtain a spot to enter the sinkhole sky. He had a way out. Moreover, the cold-faced demon monarch was so powerful now. If Chu Fengmian didn't admit defeat, he might be killed by the cold-faced demon monarch. Facing the cold-faced demon monarch, who had already passed the life and death tribulation, Chu Fengmian had no chance of winning. He would lose anyway, so it was better to admit defeat now. While everyone was pondering, Chu Fengmian's actions completely exceeded their expectations. Chu Fengmian held the ancestral dragon supreme sword and faced the cold-faced demon monarch's palm strike without retreating. He even took the initiative to meet it. Under the crowd's gaze, Chu Fengmian held the ancestral dragon supreme sword in his hand and unleashed another sword slash. This sword edge was 1,000 meters long and soared into the sky. It clashed with the cold-faced demon monarch's palm once again. Admit defeat? In Chu Fengmian's heart, the word surrender had never existed. He, Chu Fengmian, had never been defeated in his life. 10,000 heavy sword. Chu Fengmian's sword flashed and immediately began to split into tens of thousands of swords that swept out in all directions. The power of his palm was directly torn apart by the 10,000 swords. Boom! 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 Under Chu Fengmian's sword, the terrifying power of the palm was torn open, creating a huge hole. The shock waves from the collision shook the two of them, causing them to stagger back a few steps. It was already extremely shocking that he was only forced to take a few steps back in this kind of confrontation. If a weaker cultivator were to enter, he would probably be annihilated by this power in an instant. He withstood it. Chu Fengmian can actually withstand the power of the cold-faced demon monarch. His cultivation base is indeed still at the divine force realm. Not bad, he actually used his sword intent to fight against the cold-faced devil monarch. His sword intent is terrifying to the extreme. There was an uproar below. Under the cold-faced devil monarch's power, Chu Fengmian originally expected to be undefeatable. There was no doubt about it. It was already not easy to survive the cold-faced devil monarch's palm. Now, he was even on par with the cold-faced devil monarch. This was an outcome that no one had ever imagined. After all, Chu Fengmian's cultivation base was only at the divine force realm, while the cold-faced devil monarch had already reached the life and death realm. Both of them were monstrous geniuses of the northern region. It was simply impossible for them to fight across this level. The difference in power was dozens of times. Now, Chu Fengmian was actually able to forcefully turn the situation around with his swordsmanship. Sure enough, you have some skill. In terms of swordsmanship, you can surpass Feng Wuxin. Indeed, you've gone further than any sword cultivator I've ever seen. The cold-faced devil monarch sized Chu Fengmian up and sneered. However, you're too naive if you think that your swordsmanship is enough to contend against me. The devil intent around the cold-faced devil monarch suddenly condensed, once again condensing on his fist wind. The cold-faced devil monarch's aura was rising steadily, as if he was brewing something. His aura also swelled once again, and his power increased by several times. Devil shakes the 9 heavens. This cold-faced devil monarch is actually planning to use a secret technique to increase his power by 10 times. This is not good. With cold-faced demon monarch's current strength and 10 times his strength, it's almost equivalent to 10 peak-level life and death experts attacking at the same time. How could Chu Fengmian resist? The faces of countless people below changed. The cold-faced devil monarch was displaying his full power. This power was already extremely terrifying. If the cold-faced devil monarch activated a secret technique to increase his power by 10 times, how powerful would it be? It was almost incomprehensible. "Kid, die!" The cold-faced devil monarch smiled malevolently and roared. 10 times his power once again condensed on his fist wind. This punch descended from the sky. The power contained within it was simply unstoppable. However, anyone who faced this punch could only feel the destruction that it would bring. It was a fist that could destroy everything. Even a peak life and death realm expert would be killed by this fist. However, the moment this fist was about to reach Chu Fengmian, countless black shadows suddenly appeared in front of Chu Fengmian. When these black shadows appeared, they immediately scattered, forming an incomparably huge sword array. This was the mysterious black sword array that Chu Fengmian had obtained from killing a flock of black iron crows. As soon as the sword array appeared, it immediately condensed in front of Chu Fengmian, forming an incomparably huge barrier that enveloped Chu Fengmian. The cold-faced devil monarch's fist, which contained 10 times his power, just happened to land on this sword array. What's this? Sword array? What a powerful sword array! There are no less than 100,000 swords. I can even feel the aura of a heaven-grade spirit artifact from these swords. How is this possible? Look, the eye of this sword array is a heaven-grade spirit artifact. How did this person obtain so many heaven-grade spirit artifacts? Chapter 677. Everyone's eyes widened when they saw the sword formation that Chu Fengmian took out. This sword array was simply too terrifying. There were at least 100,000 spiritual swords within it. It was likely that only those colossal sects had the wealth to condense such a sword array. No one would have thought that this person would actually possess such a sword array. Especially the eye of the sword formation, which was a heaven-grade spiritual weapon. Even in the North region, heaven-grade spiritual weapons were extremely rare. Many martial arts families only had 1 or 2 heaven-grade spiritual weapons that were passed down from generation to generation. Since when did heaven-grade spiritual weapons become so common? Not only did Chu Fengmian have the ancestral Dragon Supreme Sword, but the sword formation also contained the aura of at least 2 heaven-grade spiritual weapons. Chu Fengmian actually had 3 heaven-grade spiritual weapons in his hands. Sword break. Countless spiritual swords danced in the air, forming an intricate sword formation. 100,000 spiritual swords intertwined and collided with the demon monarch's 10-fold strength in the air. Damn it! Do you think this sword formation can save you by shrinking into a tortoise shell? The demon monarch roared ferociously. He was really angry now. He had already used all of his hidden strength to deal with Chu Fengmian. In the demon monarch's opinion, it would be easy to deal with Chu Fengmian if he used all of his strength. He would be able to defeat Chu Fengmian directly. However, he did not expect Chu Fengmian to have such strength. When he showed his true strength, Chu Fengmian still had the ability to contend with him. Now that he was angry, he used all of his 10-fold strength in an attempt to kill Chu Fengmian. However, at this critical moment, Chu Fengmian still had a trump card and took out the sword formation. This made him extremely angry. He, the demon monarch, had never wasted so many tricks to kill a person. Today, even if you hide in this tortoise shell, I will still kill you. The demon monarch roared angrily. Behind him, countless demonic will burst out. The demonic will gradually condensed and turned into an incomparably huge demonic god. This demonic god looked extremely huge. As the demonic god appeared, the surrounding space began to tremble. The demonic god's aura caused the surrounding space to tremble. The one true demon. This is the ancestor of the demonic path, the only true devil. The cold-faced demon king's demonic way has reached such a level. He has even condensed the true devil, the ancestor of demonic way. This cold-faced devil monarch is really going all out. He's even resorting to this trump card. This kid is finished. However, this kid is from the North Sea Academy. He's a huge threat to their Earth Demon sect. Today, this cold-faced devil monarch is going all out to kill Chu Fengmian. countless martial artists were conversing below. They looked at Chu Fengmian as if they were looking at a dead man. Everyone thought that Chu Fengmian was doomed. The fact that the cold-faced devil monarch had used the one true devil's phantom showed that he was determined to kill Chu Fengmian. The moment the one true devil appeared, the cold-faced devil monarch's aura was completely different from before. He was like a real ancient demon that had been awakened. Every move of his contained the true essence of demonic way. Boom! The cold-faced devil monarch's mind moved. The one true devil behind him suddenly stomped his foot. An incomparably huge impact immediately blasted towards the sword formation. The arena shook as if it was on the verge of collapsing under the impact. How could Chu Fengmian survive such a powerful attack? Even with the protection of the sword formation, Chu Fengmian would definitely die. Not good. Even the calm Hanyu Ali's expression changed when he saw the one true devil condensing. The one true devil was the ancestor of demonic way. According to the legends, he was the terrifying existence that created demonic way. The phantom that condensed was obviously the cold-faced devil monarch's demonic way. He had comprehended the true essence of demonic way. The attack of the one true devil's phantom was 10 times more terrifying than the cold-faced devil monarch. The cold-faced devil monarch looked at Chu Fengmian with a ferocious expression and roared. "Go to hell, kid. You can die without regrets if you die in the hands of the one true devil." Chu Fengmian was facing the power of the one true devil's stomp. Naturally, he was aware of the power contained within. This power had reached an astonishing level. If it wasn't for the steps of life and death, the breakthrough to life-shatterer realm required not only strength but also comprehension. Right now, the cold-faced devil monarch's strength had probably reached the life-shatterer realm. Although he hadn't comprehended the steps of life and death, his strength had truly reached the life-shatterer realm. This battle was no different from a battle between two old antiques. Die! Chu Fengmian raised his head and sneered in the face of the one true devil's strength. "You want to kill me with just the strength of a phantom? You're underestimating me." Chu Fengmian suddenly spoke. His body suddenly moved and disappeared on the spot. In the next moment, Chu Fengmian's body appeared in the center of the sword formation. The power of the black mysterious sword formation was all added to Chu Fengmian's body in an instant. Chu Fengmian held the ancestral dragon paragon sword and pushed the battle dragon strength in his body to the extreme. Roar! Roar! Loud dragon roars resounded from the ancestral dragon paragon sword in Chu Fengmian's hand. The ancestral dragon paragon sword was excited in the face of a powerful enemy. The battle dragon bloodline in his body was boiling. The cold-faced devil monarch was the strongest opponent he had faced in the martial competition and could force him to go all out. If Chu Fengmian couldn't resist this kind of power, he would only face death. 1,000 dragons devour the sky. The surrounding black spiritual swords followed Chu Fengmian's roar and countless dragon roars resounded in the air. The countless black spiritual swords gradually condensed into one and turned into an incomparably huge dragon shadow. The dragon shadow was ancient and mysterious, as if it was a phantom formed by Chu Fengmian's strength from the long river of time. Although it was a dragon, it was holding a spiritual sword in its hand. It was none other than the ancestral dragon supreme sword. Dragon Emperor Yan Gu. Chu Fengmian's battle dragon bloodline and the power of the ancestral dragon paragon sword were able to awaken the ancient dragon emperor's phantom. Facing the one true devil in the sky, the two phantoms clashed fiercely. Chapter 678. Do you think I don't have a trump card? Even if the only true demon comes back to life, he won't dare to go against the Dragon Emperor. Chu Fengmian looked at the cold-faced demon monarch and shouted coldly. Cold-faced devil monarch, you have indeed hidden your strength well. Even your strength is beyond my imagination. However, no matter how strong you are no match for me. The champion of this year's martial arts conference is mine. No one can compete with me for it. Lose. Chu Fengmian's heart skipped a beat. The phantom of Dragon Emperor Yan suddenly soared into the sky and swept away everything. the illusory figure of Dragon Emperor Yan was not just one of the illusory figures. It was supported by the power of Chu Fengmian's mysterious black sword formation. The power of the sword formation was completely integrated into the illusory figure. The power that erupted in an instant was extremely terrifying. As the phantom of Dragon Emperor Yan burst out with spiritual power in the air, countless sword lights flashed. Bang! The illusory figure of the Soul True Demon was directly shattered into countless pieces. The strongest trump card of the cold-faced demon monarch was now torn apart in front of Chu Fengmian. Impossible! How can I be defeated? Defeated by a kid in the divine power realm? Impossible! I have already passed the tribulation of life and death. I am invincible in the same realm. How can this be? The cold-faced demon monarch roared crazily. He couldn't believe what he had just seen. He had already passed the tribulation of life and death. In his opinion, it would be easy for him to take the champion of this martial competition. He didn't expect to be defeated by Chu Fengmian like this. As the #1 disciple of the Earth Demon sect, the highly respected cold-faced demon monarch had all his pride shattered in front of Chu Fengmian. Invincible? In front of this Chu, there is no one who is worthy of these 2 words. Die! Chu Fengmian sneered. The phantom of Dragon Emperor Yan didn't stop after shattering the phantom of the only true demon. Instead, it attacked the cold-faced demon monarch again. The cold-faced demon monarch's aptitude was indeed terrifying. However, Chu Fengmian's foundation was much deeper than he had imagined. The cold-faced demon monarch had lost all his trump cards after the only true demon phantom was shattered. The cold-faced demon monarch's demonic will suddenly burst out and formed a barrier in front of him to resist Chu Fengmian's power. However, how could the power he had condensed in a panic fight against Chu Fengmian? Roar! The projection of the ancient Yan Dragon Emperor roared and the barrier in front of the cold-faced demon monarch was instantly torn apart. At the same time, the cold-faced demon monarch was sent flying. Boom! The cold-faced demon lord's body was torn apart and blood spurted out from his wounds. Amidst the blood, a ray of light suddenly flew out of the arena. The cold-faced demon monarch's body landed heavily outside the arena. At the final critical moment, the cold-faced demon monarch did not hesitate to expend his blood essence to activate a secret technique and escape from the arena. Chu Fengmian muttered to himself as he watched the cold-faced demon monarch escape. Abandoning his body was an extremely decisive move. Otherwise, if he had been just a second slower, the demon monarch really would have been killed by the ancient Yan Dragon Empress projection. Chu Fengmian's attack did contain some killing intent. The cold-faced demon monarch's aptitude was extremely terrifying. Now that the cold-faced demon monarch was still alive, he might become a problem for Chu Fengmian in the future if he had some fortuitous encounter. However, Chu Fengmian didn't care too much about letting the cold-faced demon monarch live. This battle had already shattered the cold-faced demon monarch's dignity and left an inner demon in his heart. It wouldn't be easy for him to overcome this inner demon. Moreover, Chu Fengmian was confident that the cold-faced demon monarch would be like an ant in front of him as long as he could overcome the life and death tribulation. He could crush the cold-faced demon monarch to death however he wanted. The cold-faced demon monarch lost? Many people present were still in a daze as they watched the cold-faced demon monarch's body fly out of the arena. The cold-faced demon monarch, who had already overcome the life and death tribulation, was an almost invincible existence in their eyes. Yet, he was defeated by Chu Fengmian just like that. Countless rays of light suddenly shot out from the crowd. They were the disciples of the Earth Demon sect. They stood beside the cold-faced demon monarch and observed his injuries. Their eyes were extremely cold. Merciless Tyrant instantly descended from the stands and walked to the cold-faced demon monarch's side. What a ruthless move! If it weren't for the cold-faced demon monarch's secret skill, he would have died in the arena. Merciless Tyrant's expression turned cold. He raised his head and looked at Chu Fengmian in the arena, asking coldly, "Don't worry. We of the Earth Demon sect will remember what happened today. Today, our Earth Demon sect was inferior. But next time, you won't be so lucky. Merciless Tyrant glanced at Chu Fengmian and said slowly. The murderous intent in his words was undisguised. Let's go. The cold-faced demon monarch said. He suddenly moved and left with the group of disciples of the Earth Demon sect. Since the cold-faced demon monarch was not dead, they had no interest in continuing to tangle with Chu Fengmian. After all, the cold-faced demon monarch had already ranked among the top 10 in this martial arts conference. They still had a chance to fight when they arrived at the ultimate ruins heaven. Even the cold-faced demon monarch has been defeated. Who else can stop this person? I can't believe such a person has appeared in the Beimang Academy. With such strength, this person really has a chance to win the championship. He's able to defeat the cold-faced demon monarch even though he's only in the divine power realm. He's no longer a genius. I really don't know where this monster came from. Voices of discussion rang out continuously. The countless warriors below all had different expressions. Some were shocked, some were jealous, and some were resentful. Of course, there was also an extremely cold gaze. It was Yi Tianjun. In Yi Tianjun's opinion, Chu Fengmian was already a dead man when he encountered the cold-faced demon monarch. Especially when the cold-faced demon monarch showed his full strength, Yi Tianjun felt that Chu Fengmian's defeat was already set in stone. But now, the one who was defeated was the cold-faced demon monarch. Saint Lord, what should we do? The faces of the disciples of the sacred faction beside Yi Tianjun changed. The more arrogant he is, the more I'll be able to establish my supremacy when I defeat him in the end. Yi Tianjun replied coldly. This person must die. Chapter 679. By the end of this battle, Chu Fengmian had defeated the cold-faced demon king and advanced to the top 4. He only needed to go through 2 more battles to become the champion of this year's martial arts conference. In the next battle, Yi Tianjun took the field. His opponent was merely a disciple from a martial arts family. He was easily defeated by Yi Tianjun. Like Chu Fengmian, Yi Tianjun advanced to the top 4. 2 spots in the top 4 had been decided. The next battle, Buried Heaven vs. Hanuali, in the spectator stands, the elder from the sky-reaching pavilion announced the next battle. Buried Heaven vs. Hanuali, I can't believe I ran into him. Chu Fengmian glanced at the ring and saw that Buried Heaven had already leaped into the ring. The moment Buried Heaven stood in the ring, his gaze seemed to deliberately glance at Chu Fengmian. Chu Fengmian could even see a lot of hatred and resentment in his gaze. It was a provocative gaze filled with hatred. Be careful. When Chu Fengmian saw this gaze, he secretly said to Hanuali, who was next to him. Okay. Hanuali nodded. Her figure moved, and she leaped directly into the ring. Hanuali's ability had not been truly displayed, so everyone present was looking forward to this battle. The 2 dark horses of this year's martial arts conference finally collided. Hanuali stood in the ring, dressed in white, while Buried Heaven, who was opposite her, was dressed in black. Boom! Without a word, Buried Heaven attacked abruptly. The moment he saw Hanuali, a ferocious look appeared in Buried Heaven's eyes. Without the slightest hesitation, he suddenly attacked with a punch. Throughout Buried Heaven's advancement, he had defeated his opponents with pure strength. In the face of his strength, Hanuali did not relax at all. She moved her hand, and an ice mirror appeared in front of her. It collided with Buried Heaven's strength. Bam! Bam! Bang! In the blink of an eye, countless noises were heard at the same time. Buried Heaven sent dozens of consecutive fist winds toward Hanuali. However, Hanuali easily blocked all of these fist winds. Almost instantaneous exchange of blows revealed the true strength of both of them. What a strong power! You're indeed the top disciple of the Cold Snow Pavilion, a genius with an innate divine body. I didn't expect that idiot Chu Fengmian couldn't take away your innate cold power. Buried Heaven said coldly all of a sudden as he sized up Hanuali. Since that's the case, I'll take away your power first, then deal with that brat Chu Fengmian. Buried Heaven's voice was extremely hoarse. Anyone who heard it could not help but want to cover their ears. "Who are you?" When Hanueli heard Buried Heaven call out her name, especially when he mentioned the cold snow pavilion, she understood what was going on. This Buried Heaven in front of her was indeed someone from Wuxing Nation. Furthermore, it sounded like he had a huge grudge against Chu Fengmian. Buried Heaven snorted coldly. "Who am I? There's no need to explain anything to someone who's about to die. You don't want to talk? Then I'll suppress you and see who you are." When Hanueli heard Buried Heaven's words, her expression was calm. However, there was a hint of anger on her face. Buried Heaven's murderous intent was almost undisguised. When facing an enemy, Hanueli had no intention of showing mercy. Ice extinction. Hanueli waved her hand, and a gust of spiritual energy turned into an ice sword in her hand. Suddenly, she waved it and slashed it toward Buried Heaven. Although it was an ice sword, it was extremely sharp. As soon as the ice sword appeared, the entire arena was surrounded by a chill. "Break!" As Hanueli swung her sword, layers of ice slashed toward Buried Heaven at the same time. These layers of ice were extremely sharp. If an ordinary martial artist came into contact with them, they would be directly cut apart. This sword was already filled with murderous intent. Hanueli did not hold back and slashed toward Buried Heaven. Her intention was to force Buried Heaven to reveal his true strength. Buried Heaven had been hiding his strength all this time. Once he revealed his strength, his identity would be easily guessed. No matter what, Buried Heaven was definitely an enemy. Even if she could not kill him, she had to at least force him to reveal his identity. "You're courting death. You want to force me to reveal my identity? Very well." Buried Heaven suddenly smiled coldly. Wisps of demonic intent burst out from his body. The moment this demonic intent appeared, it swept through the entire arena. Countless blades that slashed toward him were directly devoured. Demonic intent? This person is from the Earth Demon sect? Countless gazes looked at the demonic intent that erupted from Buried Heaven's body and were stunned. This demonic intent meant that Buried Heaven was from the Earth Demon sect? However, that was not right. The people from the Earth Demon sect did not seem to recognize Buried Heaven. Then, where did this Buried Heaven come from? Hanueli's gaze changed slightly. Clearly, the sudden appearance of this demonic intent seemed to be beyond her expectations. Initially, Hanueli had planned to force Buried Heaven to reveal his true strength first so that she could find out his true identity. However, as soon as this demonic intent appeared, Hanueli was even more puzzled. This power did not seem to belong to anyone she knew before. However, Buried Heaven could recognize her origin and identity. Clearly, Buried Heaven was definitely from Wuxing Nation. Demonic intent, this is? Below the arena, Chu Fengmian stared at Buried Heaven. The moment he saw this demonic intent, a figure suddenly appeared in his mind. However, he had not confirmed it yet. However, there was a sudden change in the situation on the stage. Hanueli waved her large hand, and the ice sword in her hand slashed out once again. The demonic intent in front of her was shattered one after another. However, there was no panic on Buried Heaven's face when this demonic intent was shattered. Instead, there was a slight smile on his face. Chu Fengmian saw this smile. "Oh no, this is bad." Chu Fengmian stood up abruptly. Boom! Hanueli's figure stood where she was. All of a sudden, her body trembled, and there was a hint of confusion in her eyes. She seemed to be standing where she was, completely stunned. Inner demon? This is the major inner demon technique. Chu Fengmian cried out in shock. The demonic intent that Buried Heaven had unleashed was no ordinary demonic intent, but an inner demon. As Hanueli killed this inner demon, it actually wormed its way into Hanueli's body directly, triggering the inner demon in Hanueli's body and causing her to fall into a momentary daze. At this moment, Buried Heaven's figure moved. With a palm strike, he had already attacked Hanueli. He was planning to take advantage of the moment when Hanueli was dealing with the inner demon to completely kill Hanueli. The situation was extremely dangerous. Chapter 680. Holy Sun. The moment Chu Fengmian saw Buried Heaven make his move and use the Great Heart Demon technique, he immediately understood who the person before him was. Buried Heaven was actually the Holy Sun of the black market in Wuxing Nation. Chu Fengmian did not expect that his original name would be Buried Heaven and that he would come to the North region as well. Even his strength had undergone an earth-shattering change. Previously, Buried Heaven had cultivated the Murderous Heart Demon technique. The Murderous Heart Demon technique was actually a branch of the true Great Heart Demon technique. However, what Buried Heaven was cultivating now was the complete Great Mental Demon technique. The Great Heart Demon technique was difficult to cultivate, but once it was successfully cultivated, it was absolutely domineering. Even the most powerful martial artists had inner demons and would lose their strength if they were affected by the Great Heart Demon technique. In a battle between martial artists of this level, even a moment of loss of strength was enough to determine the outcome. Buried Heaven's activation of the Great Heart Demon technique had affected Hanuali all of a sudden, causing her to be slightly dazed. Almost at the same time, Buried Heaven's palm had already landed. His palm strike was meant to completely kill Hanuali. It was absolutely dangerous. Even a life-saving expert would perish if he or she didn't use enough power to defend against that palm strike. Chu Fengmian did not expect Buried Heaven to have concealed himself so deeply. He was actually the Holy Sun of the black market back then. Boom! When the palm strike landed, the sky was filled with a rumbling sound as it blasted toward Hanuali. However, in the next moment, a dragon's roar suddenly rang out. Under this dragon's roar, Hanuali's gaze instantly became clear. It was as if she had broken free from the control of her inner demons and regained consciousness. In the face of Buried Heaven's palm strike, she immediately used all her strength to block it abruptly, forming a barrier in front of her. However, this hurriedly condensed barrier was far from being able to resist Buried Heaven's power. Under Buried Heaven's palm strike, the ice crystals in front of Hanuali shattered, and the remaining force of the palm strike bombarded Hanuali's body. Bang! Hanuali's figure flew out of the arena. Chu Fengmian waved his hand and caught him. Fortunately, it's nothing serious. After carefully observing Hanuali's body, Chu Fengmian let out a sigh of relief. Fortunately, at the last moment, the restriction that Chu Fengmian left on Hanuali's body suddenly came into effect. The dragon's roar snapped Hanuali out of his inner demon, and he hurriedly gathered his spiritual power to block Buried Heaven's attack. Although Hanuali was directly knocked out of the ring, his injuries were not serious. If Hanuali had not been awakened by the dragon roar, Hanuali might have been killed by Buried Heaven by now. Have a good rest. Leave the rest to me. Chu Fengmian looked at Hanuali and injected a gust of spiritual power into Hanuali's body. This spiritual power contained Builderwood's spiritual power and the power of the ancient battle dragon's blood essence. It was enough to repair her body. The fury in Chu Fengmian's voice could no longer be held back. Since Chu Fengmian and Hanuali met, this was the first time that Hanuali had been beaten to such a state. She was only a step away from death. The restriction in the arena was extremely powerful. Chu Fengmian wanted to stop it, but it was impossible. If Chu Fengmian had not left that restriction on Hanuali's body as a precaution, Hanuali would have been killed by Buried Heaven by now. This vengeance must be avenged. At this moment, Buried Heaven was already a dead man in Chu Fengmian's heart. Buried Heaven, I'll kill you. Chu Fengmian looked at the arena and said coldly. The meaning behind those words was not a threat, but a declaration. This was the most murderous intent that Chu Fengmian had ever unleashed on a person. Chu Fengmian had always been a righteous person. Moreover, the person he had injured was Hanuali, the person Chu Fengmian treasured the most in his life. Chu Fengmian had to kill Buried Heaven. Come at me if you can. Buried Heaven looked at Chu Fengmian and said coldly. Once, I could kill you as easily as squashing an ant if I wanted to. Now, it's still the same. After saying that, Buried Heaven's figure moved and he left the arena directly. He stood facing Chu Fengmian. This conversation made the people around them wonder. Many people did not expect Chu Fengmian to have a grudge with the mysterious Buried Heaven. Moreover, the most shocking thing was Buried Heaven's ability. Everyone knew about Hanyu Ali's ability. She had survived the Thousand Thunders Royal Tribulation and was already qualified to compete for the top spot in this year's tournament. However, she had been utterly defeated by Buried Heaven. This was beyond everyone's expectations. In the next battle, Feng Kang, another disciple of the Feng family, the last martial arts aristocratic family, had also entered the top 4. The top 4 positions were destined. The next battle was to fight for a chance to enter the finals. The next battle, Chu Fengmian versus Buried Heaven. The Sky Pavilion elders said calmly from the spectator's stand. This sentence immediately attracted the attention of countless people present. Buried Heaven had almost killed Hanyu Ali and had already formed a deadly feud with Chu Fengmian. In particular, Chu Fengmian and Buried Heaven were both super dark horses in this year's tournament. They wanted to see who was stronger between the two of them. Alright, looks like I finally have a chance to kill you with my own hands this time. When Buried Heaven heard this, his expression became extremely gloomy. He looked at Chu Fengmian with undisguised murderous intent. Chu Fengmian, today is the day you die. Your opportunity will belong to me, and even your woman will belong to me. Today is the day I, Buried Heaven, make a name for myself, and you'll be my stepping stone. Buried Heaven said coldly. With a single leap, he was already in the ring. Chu Fengmian also came into the arena and looked into Buried Heaven's eyes. Chu Fengmian's expression looked extremely calm. Only his eyes revealed a cold murderous intent. Those who knew Chu Fengmian knew that this was how Chu Fengmian truly looked like when he had the intention to kill. He was not ostentatious, but in his heart, Buried Heaven was a dead man. No matter what, he would die today. Chu Fengmian's expression turned cold. You talk too much nonsense. You're about to die, so think about your last words. What a joke. It's not certain who will die today. Chu Fengmian, do you really think that I, Buried Heaven, am still the Black Market Holy Son? You probably don't know my true identity. I'm a disciple of 9 Demon City. Do you think you can fight me? Buried Heaven looked at Chu Fengmian and suddenly burst into laughter. Today, I'll kill you. I heard that you've obtained many opportunities in the North region. Just as well, I'll kill you and all your opportunities will belong to me. Chapter 681. 9 Demon City? Is Buried Heaven from one of the 7 major sects? With his ability, it's not impossible for him to be from one of the 7 major sections. Upon hearing Buried Heaven's words, the crowd began to whisper among themselves. Buried Heaven's origin had always been mysterious. He did not belong to any of the other sects in the North region. Now, he had finally announced his identity. One of the 7 major sects, 9 Demon City. The Earth Demons sect used to be one of the branches of 9 Demon City. When they came to the North region, they could become a superpower in the North region. There was no need for words to describe the power of 9 Demon City. Since Buried Heaven was from 9 Demon City, it was no wonder that he had such ability. Boy, you've cracked my inner demon killing technique before, but I'm different now. I'd like to see if you can still contend with my great inner demon killing technique. Buried Heaven shouted coldly and suddenly took a step forward. Monstrous demonic intent was unleashed from his body. The monstrous demonic will directly turned into numerous swords, each of which contained countless inner demons. Although it seemed that the sword edge was aimed at Chu Fengmian's body, in fact, the sword edge's target was Chu Fengmian's mind. The sword that contained the heart demon slashed at Chu Fengmian, intending to destroy his mind. Once Chu Fengmian's mind was affected by the inner demons, Chu Fengmian would have no power to resist. He could only be easily defeated by Buried Heaven. The sword of the heart demon was an extremely high level of attainment. To be able to control the inner demons and condense them into swords, Buried Heaven's attainments in the great inner demon killing technique were extremely high. Condensing the inner demons into swords. Who exactly is Buried Heaven? He's cultivated the great inner demon killing technique of 9 Demons City to this level. Some of the powerhouses below also recognized the technique that Buried Heaven was using. It was the great inner demon killing technique. The Great Heart Demon technique was considered an extremely profound cultivation technique in 9 Demon City. It was famous, but there were very few people who could cultivate it to an extremely high level. Now that Buried Heaven had reached the level of condensing the inner demons into swords, his ability had definitely reached an extremely terrifying level. As long as one of the blades slashed at Chu Fengmian would be controlled. Chu Fengmian would then be controlled by the inner demon. By then, Chu Fengmian's life would be completely in Buried Heaven's hands. Major Heart Demon Mantra? Your Great Heart Demon Mantra is meaningless to me because no one can affect me. Chu Fengmian sneered in the face of the Heart Demon and waved his hand. Suddenly, the Heart Demon's sword before him shattered completely. Chu Fengmian allowed the fragments to land on his body. However, his heart didn't waver in the slightest. Chu Fengmian killed the Heart Demon as soon as it appeared in his heart. What? Everyone looked at Chu Fengmian. When they saw that Chu Fengmian didn't react at all when he encountered the Great Heart Demon Mantra, countless people were shocked. They were well aware of how powerful the Great Demon Heart technique was. Previously, when they were dealing with Hanueli, Buried Heaven had activated the Great Demon Heart technique and instantly defeated Hanueli. Moreover, if Chu Fengmian hadn't placed a restriction on Hanueli's body, Hanueli might have been killed by Buried Heaven. However, Chu Fengmian didn't even care about the Great Demon Heart technique. He wasn't affected at all. How strong must ones will be to be able to do that? Everyone had their own heart demon. The most terrifying aspect of the Great Demon Heart technique was that it could trigger the heart demon in a warrior's mind. It was almost impossible to guard against because there would always be heart demons in the hearts of powerful warriors. The Great Demon Heart technique could trigger heart demons. No matter how powerful one was, if one's will wasn't strong enough, one would be affected. In ancient times, there were many powerhouses. Although they were powerful, their minds weren't strong enough. They were directly controlled by heart demons and went crazy. Such incidents were not rare. Therefore, the Great Demon Heart technique could be considered one of the most difficult techniques to deal with in the entire northern region. It was extremely tricky. However, it was meaningless in front of Chu Fengmian. Chu Fengmian easily blocked it. How is this possible? Buried Heaven's expression changed slightly. He didn't hold back at all when he attacked. He used his full strength as soon as he attacked. He used the Great Demon Heart technique to condense the Heart Demon sword. He wanted to kill Chu Fengmian with a single blow. However, it didn't affect Chu Fengmian at all. This was far beyond his expectations. However, Buried Heaven's expression soon calmed down. He looked at Chu Fengmian and said coldly, "Not bad. It seems that your strength hasn't disappointed me. It would be too boring if you were to be defeated by me in an instant. How strong is your mind? In terms of strength, you're no match for me." In the arena, Buried Heaven roared angrily. His body moved all of a sudden and shot up to the sky. Then, he threw a punch at Chu Fengmian. Previously, Buried Heaven had used all of his strength to defeat his enemies. His strength was extremely robust. Chu Fengmian felt that the power of this punch had almost surpassed the scope of life and death. The speed of this punch was extremely fast. In almost an instant, the punch was already heading toward Chu Fengmian's head. Just by relying on his physical strength alone, Buried Heaven was already standing at the top of this martial arts conference. Moreover, he also had the Great Demon Heart technique, which was extremely difficult to deal with. Hanueli's defeat at his hands was not unjust. In the eyes of countless people, this strength was even a little shocking. A divine power realm martial artist had actually reached such a level of strength. If Buried Heaven survived a life and death crisis in the future and his strength skyrocketed, he would most likely become even more terrifying. However, in Chu Fengmian's eyes, this strength was nothing. All along, Chu Fengmian had been an invincible existence in the same realm based purely on strength. He could even crush martial artists of a higher realm. In terms of strength, Chu Fengmian had never been afraid of anyone. He had the bloodline of the battle dragon and the body of the ancient dragon king. He was like a battle dragon in human form. In the face of buried heaven's punch, Chu Fengmian stood where he was without dodging. He suddenly condensed spiritual power in his right hand and transformed it into a punch. He suddenly blasted it into the air. It was a head-on clash. In the face of such strength, Chu Fengmian did not retreat at all. Instead, he chose to go up and fight head-on with buried heaven. Everyone already knew that Chu Fengmian's strength was shockingly powerful. However, many people did not expect him to choose to fight head-on at this time. Chapter 682. Chu Fengmian's strength was strong enough to crush martial artists of the same level. However, buried heaven's strength was even more frightening. Kanglin Jing, who ranked 4th on the list of top 100 talents, could not even take a punch from him. In the eyes of the crowd, Chu Fengmian's choice to fight buried heaven head-on was not a wise choice. Boom! The two fists collided. Violent spiritual energy wantonly swept across the entire arena, causing the entire arena to tremble. Even outside the ring, countless people could feel the power of the explosion, and they couldn't help but use their spirit power to resist. The restriction on the arena was unable to completely dissolve the power of both of them, and it was even on the verge of collapsing. This collision of power was the most intense confrontation in this year's Martial Battle Conference. The collision of spiritual power ended in an instant, and a figure suddenly retreated. Everyone looked in the direction of the retreating figure and saw that it was buried heaven. In this collision of power, buried heaven was the one who was defeated. Chu Fengmian, on the other hand, stood where he was with a relaxed expression. "I don't believe that I can't kill you today." Buried heaven was forced to retreat, but the murderous intent on his face was even stronger. Buried heaven hated Chu Fengmian to the core. Back in Wushan country, he was suppressed by Chu Fengmian and could not lift his head. He came from one of the 7 major sects and was extremely proud. He did not expect to be trampled under someone's foot in such a small place. Now that he had a fortuitous encounter and came to the North region, he wanted to take revenge on Chu Fengmian. This martial arts conference was the best opportunity for him to kill Chu Fengmian, because no matter who was behind Chu Fengmian, they would not be able to participate in this. Buried heaven had planned countless times in his mind on how to kill Chu Fengmian. However, he had never expected that Chu Fengmian's strength would be so powerful. The fact that his great mental demon technique had no effect on Chu Fengmian at all was enough to make buried heaven feel rather flustered. Next, he lost to Chu Fengmian in the strength that he was most confident in. How could he accept this? His expression became extremely ugly. However, buried heaven was a genius of his generation after all. He did not panic at all. Even though he was currently at a disadvantage, all he could think about was how he could deal with Chu Fengmian and how he could kill him. The killing intent in his eyes grew thicker and thicker, and even his expression became extremely vicious. Suddenly, a fruit the size of a fist appeared in buried heaven's hand. The patterns on the fruit were extremely strange. Some of the warriors looked at the patterns on the fruit and were stunned. It was as if they had been invaded by a heart demon. Heart demon Dao fruit? The moment Chu Fengmian saw the fruit, he muttered to himself in his heart. This fruit was the inner demon Dao fruit. It was said that some experts who cultivated the great inner demon mantra extracted the inner demons of others and cultivated them. This heart demon Dao fruit was absolutely fatal to a martial artist. Some martial artists with slightly weaker minds might be affected when they saw this heart demon Dao fruit, triggering a heart demon. However, for warriors who cultivated the great inner demon mantra, the inner demon Dao fruit was an absolute tonic. Its effect was more powerful than a heaven-level spirit pill. Nobody knew how much time and effort it would take to condense an inner demon Dao fruit. Buried heaven had probably planned to use this inner demon Dao fruit when he was going through a life and death crisis. Now, he was forced to use it directly under Chu Fengmian's coercion. Boy, you've made me lose a chance to survive a life and death crisis, but it's okay. Once I kill you and obtain your adventure, I'll be able to make up for all my losses. Buried Heaven looked at Chu Fengmian and smiled ferociously. With a move of his hand, the inner demon Dao fruit fell directly into Buried Heaven's mouth. Buried Heaven's figure began to swell abruptly. The demonic intent on his body also became extremely terrifying. Buried Heaven looked at Chu Fengmian and laughed loudly. Chu Fengmian, you're going to lose today. Even if your abilities exceed my calculations, so what? You're going to die today. After consuming the inner demon Dao fruit, Buried Heaven's aura suddenly skyrocketed 10 times compared to before. His face also revealed extreme confidence. You don't deserve to have a treasure like the ancestral dragon's supreme sword in your hand. All your adventures will belong to me. Buried Heaven looked at Chu Fengmian with eyes full of greed. Chu Fengmian's countless adventures were all treasures. If he killed Chu Fengmian, all these treasures would belong to him. Is that so? Buried Heaven, do you think you're a match for me just because your abilities have skyrocketed? Chu Fengmian looked at Buried Heaven and said calmly. You're just a little devil. Even if your abilities are 100 times stronger, let alone 10 times stronger, you'll still fall in front of me. Faced with Buried Heaven's skyrocketing abilities, Chu Fengmian's expression was extremely calm. This calmness was not deliberately feigned. Chu Fengmian's heart was completely unperturbed. Now, no matter how powerful Buried Heaven was, Chu Fengmian would not waver in the slightest before him. His 9-region sword principle had been refined again as he watched countless battles at the martial combat assembly. Even if Chu Fengmian faced the Lu clan's patriarch, Lu Qianren, who had reached the life-shatterer stage, Chu Fengmian was confident that he could fight him, even if he could not defeat him. Buried Heaven's abilities had skyrocketed, but he was still far from reaching the life-shatterer stage. This kind of ability was troublesome. However, in Chu Fengmian's heart, today, Buried Heaven was still a dead man. How arrogant! Buried Heaven suddenly roared angrily. I'll cripple you first. Let's see if you can still be so arrogant when the time comes. Buried Heaven took a step forward. The demonic will around him suddenly condensed into a long sword. This inner demon sword had condensed into a physical form in his hand. Not only was it murderous, but it was also capable of killing. His sword filled the battlefield with overflowing demonic will, causing the stars in the arena to shift. The sky and earth spun, and the demonic will that filled the sky turned the arena into a demonic domain. His sword did not have the slightest bit of skill, but its pure power was enough to kill a peak life and death expert. Pure strength. Your sword is an insult to the way of the sword. Chu Fengmian said coldly. You want to cripple me with this kind of method? What a joke. Today, I'll show you what true sword Dao is. Following Chu Fengmian's words, the ancestral dragon supreme sword in his hand moved, and a sword suddenly soared into the sky. Chapter 683. Chu Fengmian's sword abruptly soared into the sky. This move was based on his latest understanding of the 9 realms sword technique. It traced the origin of the sword and slashed out. The moment the sword edge left its sheath, the sword gleam actually dispelled the surrounding demonic will. No demonic realm could exist in front of his sword edge. 3,000 Sword World. The sword gleamed. The entire arena was enveloped by the sword edge. The sword cut through the demonic will and formed a sword world. The 3,000 sword worlds were all sword realms. Hiss. The 3,000 sword worlds condensed into one the moment the demonic will was cut apart. The power of the 3,000 sword worlds all merged into one sword edge. This sword represented Chu Fengmian's most powerful move. Boom! There was an incomparable roar as the 2 sword edges suddenly collided in the air. Buried Heaven's sword was instantly overwhelmed by pure power. Buried Heaven's face turned deathly pale all of a sudden. Under the sword edge, all of his power was far from being able to resist. No matter how strong his power was, in a confrontation of sword principles, Chu Fengmian was an invincible existence. He was invincible and would never be defeated. The terrifying power sent buried heaven flying. The web between his thumb and index finger was forcibly ruptured, and a copious amount of blood flowed out. What? Buried heaven was defeated just like that? He swallowed the inner demon Dao fruit and his power skyrocketed tenfold. He should be able to beat Chu Fengmian to a pulp with a wave of his hand. How could he be defeated? The venerables could not believe what they were seeing and turned pale with fright. Buried heaven had previously defeated countless powerhouses without using the power of the inner demon Dao fruit. Buried heaven had swallowed the inner demon Dao fruit and his power had skyrocketed tenfold. Under such circumstances, in the eyes of the crowd, buried heaven was almost invincible. Unless it was an ancient antique who had transcended life and death, no one could possibly be his match. However, buried heaven, who had just been flaunting his prowess, was defeated by Chu Fengmian's sword. The countless onlookers were stunned. Was this Chu Fengmian's true strength? Time and time again, they thought that Chu Fengmian had reached his limit. They did not expect Chu Fengmian's limit to be far greater than that. In the arena. Impossible. What kind of sword technique is this? I've never seen it before. No matter how powerful the swordsmanship is, in the face of absolute power, it should be shattered. Buried heaven was sent flying, and the demonic intent on his body appeared once again. The demonic will condensed once again and enhanced buried heaven's body. Given buried heaven's character, he would never believe that he would be defeated by Chu Fengmian. In order to deal with Chu Fengmian, he had even consumed his final Dao fruit of the heart demon. He wanted to thoroughly defeat Chu Fengmian in front of everyone and trample him under his feet. But now, even with his full strength, he was still defeated by Chu Fengmian. How could he endure the humiliation of being trampled under Chu Fengmian's foot again? He once again gathered countless demonic wills, turned them into his own power, and attacked Chu Fengmian once more. However, his sword had yet to move. Chu Fengmian's speed was even faster than his. Chu Fengmian leaped and arrived in front of buried heaven in an instant. He waved his large hand and slammed it down abruptly. The spiritual power on this slap even produced a few dragon roars. With the enhancement of the battle dragon's power, it was like a battle dragon's claw that slammed heavily on buried heaven's body. Boom! The demonic will on buried heaven's body instantly collided with the countless spiritual powers in Chu Fengmian's palm. In an instant, there were thousands and tens of thousands of exchanges. In the next moment, the demonic will on buried heaven's body was completely shattered. With a thought, Chu Fengmian exerted force again. Buried heaven's body was directly slammed to the ground by Chu Fengmian's palm. In the next moment, Chu Fengmian's foot stepped directly on buried heaven's face. Buried heaven, a genius of the northern region and a disciple of the 7 major sects, was now directly trampled under Chu Fengmian's foot just like that. This kind of humiliation was absolutely unbearable for any martial artist. It was more painful than killing them, and more humiliating than having them kneel. In particular, this was under the watchful eyes of the public. In this arena, buried heaven was directly defeated by Chu Fengmian, who stepped on his face. This news would definitely spread throughout the entire northern region within a day, and buried heaven would forever become a joke in the northern region. What a ruthless move. Buried heaven wanted to kill Hanueli before, so he can't blame anyone else. A disciple of the 7 major sects has been humiliated like this. I'm afraid 9 Demon City won't take this lying down. This brat's character is really arrogant. He even dares to humiliate someone from the 7 major sects like this. Seeing buried heaven being trampled under Chu Fengmian's foot, countless people present inhaled sharply. This move was indeed extremely decisive and ruthless. To a genius like buried heaven, his dignity was more important than his life. Now that buried heaven had been defeated and stepped on his face, it was more painful than killing him. Moreover, buried heaven was a member of 9 Demon City, one of the 7 major sections. Chu Fengmian had not only trampled on buried heaven's face, but he had also stepped on 9 Demon City's face. 9 Demon City would definitely not take this lying down when they found out about this. Naturally, Chu Fengmian was well aware of all this. However, facing buried heaven, Chu Fengmian wanted to thoroughly humiliate him. Killing him would be letting him off too easily. Chu Fengmian wanted to bring buried heaven endless humiliation before killing him. Damn it! Damn it! How dare you humiliate me like this? I must kill you. I'll kill all your friends and rape your women. I'll extract your soul and refine it so that you'll suffer endless pain for the rest of your life. Buried heaven roared crazily. He had already fallen into madness. The gazes that were directed at him caused him to suffer great humiliation at every moment. As a disciple of Nine Demons City, where was he not respected? Even in the northern region, he was a top figure who was respected and feared by everyone. Now that he had been trampled under Chu Fengmian's foot, he had suddenly fallen from grace. From being respected by everyone, he had become a laughingstock. How could he tolerate such a contrast? Kill! 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 Under the humiliation, the power in buried heaven's body suddenly skyrocketed. This humiliation caused all the potential in his body to erupt. Buried heaven wished he could kill Chu Fengmian right now. No, he wanted to defeat Chu Fengmian and let him suffer all the humiliation and pain in the world. Only then could he wash away his current anger. His body was being trampled under Chu Fengmian's foot. In an instant, he gathered spiritual power and wanted to charge up and kill Chu Fengmian. Chapter 684. Amidst this humiliation, buried heaven's cultivation base seemed to have reached a higher level all of a sudden. Most of the injuries on his body had healed, and he was brimming with energy. For geniuses like him, the more they were in a battle of life and death, the more dangerous the environment, the more likely it was for them to break through their cultivation base. Under this boundless humiliation, buried heaven's cultivation base actually advanced a step further. This extraordinary humiliation almost angered buried heaven to death, but it was this anger that helped his ability to advance further. Chu Fengmian, you're digging your own grave. Do you think you're humiliating me? Unfortunately, you didn't expect my cultivation base to reach a higher level. Now, the person who deserves to die is you. All the humiliation I've suffered will be returned to you 1,000 times over. Buried heaven suddenly roared. The spiritual power in his body seemed to have reached its limit at this moment. With a rumble, his body actually forcibly lifted Chu Fengmian's foot. He wanted to flip Chu Fengmian over. Buried heaven is indeed a peerless genius. At a time like this, he's not being devoured by his inner demon. Instead, the potential in his body has been stimulated, causing his ability to soar. Although buried heaven was defeated and humiliated earlier, a genius like him will have an outrageous increase in their ability once they break through a level. Chu Fengmian is definitely playing with fire by not killing buried heaven. What a terrifying power. Buried heaven's power is close to surpassing life and death. It's unstoppable. The venerables saw the changes in buried heaven's body and naturally understood that buried heaven's ability had soared in a desperate situation. If buried heaven broke free from Chu Fengmian's foot, the outcome of this battle would be uncertain. It was even possible that buried heaven could turn the tables. Chu Fengmian heard these discussions, but the corners of his mouth curled into a disdainful smile. Is that so? Chu Fengmian muttered to himself. He glanced at buried heaven, who was bursting with spiritual power under his foot, trying to break free. Suddenly, Chu Fengmian's foot condensed spiritual power again, and he stomped down. The moment his foot landed, dragon energy was rampant. The power of the ancient Dragon King's body erupted and condensed on his foot. It was like an ancient war dragon's claw attack. Boom! With this stomp, the spiritual power that buried heaven had just consolidated and intended to resist Chu Fengmian was completely crushed. I've said it before. Even if you're 10 times or 100 times stronger, it's meaningless. Lie down on the ground. Chu Fengmian's stomp crushed all the spiritual power that buried heaven had just consolidated. Buried heaven had just broken through and wanted to take advantage of the situation to break free. However, Chu Fengmian's stomp shattered all his plans. Buried Heaven suddenly spat out a large mouthful of blood. The blood was black in color and was demonic blood. Chu Fengmian's kick had shaken the demon blood out. Demonic blood was the origin of these demonic Dao cultivators. After vomiting this demonic blood, Burial Platform's complexion immediately paled. No matter how hard Buried Heaven struggled, he couldn't seem to break free from the foot of Chu Fengmian's mountain. In the hearts of countless people, Buried Heaven was an invincible figure. Many people thought highly of Buried Heaven and thought that he would be the one to take first place in this martial arts conference. Now, Chu Fengmian was stomping on his face and humiliating him immensely. No matter how hard he struggled, he couldn't break free. "Junior, you've gone too far. There are some people you shouldn't provoke. Let Buried Heaven go. This is the best choice for you." At this moment, a voice suddenly sounded. The voice was extremely cold. Everyone looked in the direction of the voice. The owner of the voice was the dark horse of the previous Earth Demon sect, Merciless Tyrant. 9 Demons City and Earth Demons sect seemed to be two different sects, but in reality, they were inextricably linked. In particular, Earth Demons sect was an independent force from 9 Demons City. The relationship between them was obviously much more intimate than it seemed. Seeing Buried Heaven being humiliated by Chu Fengmian, Merciless Tyrant suddenly spoke. "Let Buried Heaven go and apologize. There's still room for reconciliation. Otherwise, what you've done today will only bring disaster to you in Beimang Academy," Merciless Tyrant said coldly. Merciless Tyrant said coldly. His words were almost a threat to Chu Fengmian. He wanted Chu Fengmian to release Buried Heaven. Release him? Chu Fengmian's lips curled into a mocking smile when he heard Merciless Tyrant's words. He, Chu Fengmian, had never been afraid of any threats. No one could save the person he wanted to kill. Moreover, if Merciless Tyrant was trying to persuade him and pay the price, Chu Fengmian might consider it. However, threatening Chu Fengmian in this way? Chu Fengmian had been threatened countless times, but he had never once compromised. If he compromised because of threats, then what was the point of cultivating swordsmanship? Swordsmanship was about following one's heart. No one could affect what Chu Fengmian wanted to do. Where did this little devil come from? How dare you threaten me? I'd like to see who can save this person today. Chu Fengmian shouted coldly. Crack! Buried Heaven's face was instantly deformed under Chu Fengmian's foot. The stomp had caused his face to become incomparably distorted. This action was the perfect answer. Damn it! Merciless Tyrant's expression became ferocious. This stomp had humiliated him in the slightest. He could not bear it any longer. Good boy. You can be arrogant in this arena, but if you dare to leave, I, Merciless Tyrant, will kill you. Merciless Tyrant's cold voice reverberated throughout the venue. This was no longer a threat. It was a declaration to Chu Fengmian. Merciless Tyrant was a figure who was only one step away from transcending life and death. In the eyes of many warriors, his strength was not much different from those old antiques who had transcended life and death. In the Earth Demon sect, Merciless Tyrant's status was enough to be on equal footing with those old antiques who had transcended life and death. His threat was not only to a newcomer of the younger generation, but also to many experts who had been famous for a long time. However, Chu Fengmian's expression remained indifferent. He had made enough enemies in his life. It could be said that the entire 7 major sects were his enemies. There was no harm in adding another Merciless Tyrant to the list. Moreover, Chu Fengmian and the Earth Demon sect could never coexist peacefully. Die! Chu Fengmian snorted coldly and stomped his foot again. Chapter 685. Crack! Buried Heaven's head was crushed under Chu Fengmian's foot. Blood qi was rampant. Only Buried Heaven's screams were left echoing in the arena. Chu Fengmian's sword formation devoured Buried Heaven's endless blood qi. Chu Fengmian also obtained all the adventures he had. Although Buried Sky's sword Dao was crude, it wasn't without merit. Chu Fengmian had also integrated his sword Dao into the nine-realm sword technique, allowing his sword Dao to take another step forward. All of Buried Heaven's accumulated adventures now belonged to Chu Fengmian. Ruthless, too ruthless. Many of the spectating martial artists did not expect Chu Fengmian to be so ruthless. He did not give the Earth Demon sect any face and directly trampled Buried Heaven to death. Buried Heaven was a disciple of the Nine Demons City, one of the 7 major sections. However, this identity was meaningless in front of Chu Fengmian. Chu Fengmian would never consider the other party's identity when he wanted to kill someone. In any case, Chu Fengmian would kill anyone who deserved to be killed. Chu Fengmian's methods were extremely ruthless. First, he trampled Buried Heaven under his foot and humiliated him. Then, under Merciless Tyrant's threat, Chu Fengmian ignored it and trampled Buried Heaven to death right in front of Merciless Tyrant. This year's Great Dark Horse, Buried Heaven, who was originally qualified to take the top spot, died under Chu Fengmian's foot just like that. He could not fight back at all. This strength had intimidated everyone present. So powerful. I'm afraid Chu Fengmian will win first place. The last battle will be between Chu Fengmian and Yi Tianjun. One side has the innate divine body and the chaotic divine body, while the other is a peerless genius. Both of them have countless adventures on their backs. I wonder who will win this battle. Some martial artists were looking forward to the next battle. The next battle would be between Chu Fengmian and Yi Tianjun. As for Buried Heaven, he was now a dead man. No one paid attention to him. In the spectator stands, Merciless Tyrant watched Chu Fengmian trample Buried Heaven to death. His expression changed slightly and he only spoke after a long time. Good, as expected of a genius from the Northern Mang Academy. You're so arrogant that you can even ignore my words. Merciless Tyrant said slowly. His voice sounded calm but everyone could hear the fury in his heart. He had already disregarded his own status and threatened Chu Fengmian directly in an attempt to save Buried Heaven. However, Chu Fengmian did not give him any face at all. Instead, he stomped Buried Heaven to death in front of everyone as soon as he finished speaking. This was already a blatant slap to his face. I mean what I say. Kid, if you dare to leave this arena, I will definitely kill you. Merciless Tyrant's spiritual power abruptly erupted. His spiritual power was so strong that it was unimaginable. Many of the martial artists around him could not help but retreat. Some of the experts in the venue were nervous when they saw Merciless Tyrant's rage. Merciless Tyrant was also a lawless figure. If he were to fight with Chu Fengmian in this venue, it would definitely be a big fight. Merciless Tyrant, the elder from the sky-reaching pavilion, was about to speak. However, Merciless Tyrant was the first to speak. This matter has nothing to do with anyone else. Anyone who dares to stop me will be an enemy of the Earth Demon sect. His words silenced many of the powerhouses who had wanted to persuade Luo Yunyang and Luo Yunyan. They were not willing to clash with the Earth Demon sect over Chu Fengmian. The Earth Demon sect was a group of lunatics, and Merciless Tyrant was even more of a lunatic. Kill me? If the Earth Demon sect chooses to go against me, I don't mind killing everyone in your sect today. I'll even completely destroy your sect in the future. Chu Fengmian said coldly. Merciless Tyrant, others may be afraid of you, but in front of me, you're just a little devil. If you want to die, I'll send you to accompany heaven in death. After saying that, Chu Fengmian's figure moved and directly descended from the arena. In the face of Merciless Tyrant's threat, Chu Fengmian did not seem to care at all. What arrogance! Destroy the Earth Demon sect? Kill the disciples of the Earth Demon sect? You're just a junior. Do you really think you're invincible? Merciless Tyrant suddenly shouted as he watched Chu Fengmian leave the arena. Anyone who dares to challenge the dignity of the Earth Demon sect must die. Today, I'll kill you and take your head as an explanation. Merciless Tyrant's face was extremely cold, and the killing intent in his eyes was undisguised. In the arena, he could not do anything to Chu Fengmian because even he could not break the restriction on the arena. However, once he left the arena, he would no longer be protected by the restriction. A stream of spiritual energy suddenly condensed in the palm of his hand. The moment this spiritual energy appeared, countless people in the surroundings retreated. Merciless Tyrant was known as Merciless Tyrant because of his terrifying pair of poisonous hands. This pair of poisonous hands had been soaked in many kinds of poisons. When he activated his spiritual energy, it contained this kind of deadly poison. Even the slightest contact with this deadly poison could endanger one's life. Every move of his contained deadly poison. Poison cleaving mountains and rivers. Waves of spiritual energy suddenly formed into a spear in Merciless Tyrant's hand and bombarded Chu Fengmian. Merciless Tyrant had made his move. The spiritual power contained within his long spear was highly toxic. Even if one resisted it with force, the deadly poison would still enter the body and be impossible to guard against. Fighting was not allowed in the martial arts conference, but Merciless Tyrant did not care at all. This was because his strength was enough to break the rules. This kind of arrogance surpassed that of anyone present. Many experts in the martial arts arena saw Merciless Tyrant make his move, but no one dared to stop him. They could only watch the battle between Chu Fengmian and Merciless Tyrant. This was because it would be extremely dangerous for them to stop Merciless Tyrant. Merciless Tyrant's body was full of deadly poison. Anyone who came into contact with it would be extremely troublesome. This poison was almost impossible to neutralize unless it was an antique that had transcended life and death. However, Chu Fengmian's expression was incomparably calm in the face of this spear. Chu Fengmian slowly moved. His right hand suddenly transformed into the War Dragon's claw. He swung it fiercely into the air and bombarded it. Boom! There was a loud noise. The War Dragon's claw swept across the sky. The spear was directly shattered by the War Dragon's claw. Chapter 686. The War Dragon's claw swept across heaven and earth. The spear shattered in an instant. However, Merciless Tyrant did not show any signs of surprise when he saw the spear shatter. Instead, he sneered. "How dare you resist my merciless demonic skill? You must be tired of living." Merciless Tyrant shouted coldly. "Leave your War Dragon's claw behind today." Corrode. The spear shattered, but its spiritual power melted and turned into a pool of poison that corroded Chu Fengmian's War Dragon's claw. The poison sizzled as it corroded the surrounding space. All of it stuck to Chu Fengmian's War Dragon's claw. Chu Fengmian immediately sensed that the War Dragon's claw was being corroded by the poison. He knew that this was Merciless Tyrant's strongest move. His poison was strong enough to corrode everything, including heaven-grade spiritual weapons. This is the merciless demonic skill. Merciless Tyrant's strongest move. Once Merciless Tyrant makes his move, it's almost impossible to resist. One can only retreat. Even the slightest touch of the poison will cause a great disaster. Chu Fengmian is really stupid. He actually planned to resist with his body. This is bad. The hidden experts should be making their move soon. Otherwise, will Chu Fengmian really die in Merciless Tyrant's hands? It's good that Chu Fengmian is dead. With one less genius in the northern region, we'll have more opportunities to rise. The venerable warriors all had different thoughts. Some of them who had some grudges against Chu Fengmian even hoped that Merciless Tyrant would make his move and kill Chu Fengmian. The War Dragon's claw hissed under the corrosive effects of the poison. Merciless demonic skill? It's nothing special. It's just an unorthodox skill. It can't even be considered a high-level skill in Nine Demon City. You want to use it against me? What a joke! Chu Fengmian snorted coldly. With a move of his right hand, countless amounts of spiritual energy condensed into scales on the battle dragon claw. Each of the scales was like a formation eye, forming a huge formation and activating the power of the ancient Dragon King body to the extreme. Immediately, the poison corroded the surface of the War Dragon claw. However, it was unable to corrode it at all. Instead, it made the War Dragon claw shine even brighter. Although the poison was powerful, it was impossible for it to corrode the battle dragon claw. Chu Fengmian had condensed the body of the ancient Dragon King, and his body had been tempered by divine objects like the sky crystal. His body was extremely tough. Not only was the poison unable to corrode Chu Fengmian's battle dragon claw, but it was also a form of tempering, causing the battle dragon claw to become even tougher. Break! Chu Fengmian snorted and waved his battle dragon claw again. The battle dragon claw was poisoned and fell to the ground. Everyone looked at the battle dragon claw and saw that it was not damaged at all. Even the poison was helpless against Chu Fengmian's battle dragon claw. The merciless demonic art is only SOSO. Chu Fengmian indifferently spat out these words. Merciless Tyrant was a genius expert who had made a name for himself in the northern region for a long time. His strength was indeed disappointing. If that's all you've got, then all the disciples of the Earth Demon sect will die here today. Although Chu Fengmian's voice was flat, everyone could hear the seriousness in his words. Chu Fengmian had always been a man of his word. He had said that he would kill Buried Heaven, so he would kill Buried Heaven regardless of any threats. He would kill all the disciples of the Earth Demon sect present. Although these words were arrogant, no one doubted them when they came from Chu Fengmian's mouth. What an arrogant junior. The merciless demonic art is only SOSO. I've only used 10% of my strength. I was going to give you a chance. Since you're the one who's rushing to your death, I'll fulfill your wish. Merciless Tyrant was furious when he heard Chu Fengmian's words. He was being ridiculed by a junior. Merciless Tyrant's face was contorted with rage. Behind him, countless purple poisonous miasma appeared and surrounded Merciless Tyrant. It made him look like a venomous man. His pair of poisonous hands started to swell. The color of his hands also started to change from green to a deeper color. Once the poison was unleashed, the martial artists present would be severely injured if not killed. Merciless Tyrant, please stop. Just as Merciless Tyrant was about to strike, an ancient voice suddenly rang out. This ancient voice descended from the sky. It was an old antique who had been hiding all this time. The owner of this voice was hidden in the void, but Chu Fengmian could hear a sense of transcendence from this voice. It was obvious that this was an old antique who had already stepped onto the life and death steps and reached the life-shattering realm. Fighting is not allowed in the Martial Emperor City. Please settle your grudges outside. The voice spoke calmly, but the meaning behind his words was extremely majestic. The owner of this ancient voice was also an important figure in the northern region. He was like an old antique. Upon hearing this voice, even the unruly Merciless Tyrant could only nod and withdraw his spiritual power. No matter how strong Merciless Tyrant was, he still could not compete with a true expert in the life-shattering realm. Chu Fengmian, I'll spare your life this time in the Martial King City, but I'll only let you live for a few more days. Unless you stay here forever, I'll definitely kill you if you dare to step out of the city. Merciless Tyrant looked at Chu Fengmian and shouted angrily. He moved and returned to the spectator stand. Kill me? Let's see if you have the ability. Chu Fengmian was still unafraid. He responded coldly and also calmed his spiritual power. Martial Imperial City was not a place for life and death battles. There were countless experts watching, so Chu Fengmian did not dare to use his full strength. Merciless Tyrant was indeed the strongest expert Chu Fengmian had seen under the life-shattering realm. It was impossible for Chu Fengmian to defeat an expert in the life-shattering realm with his current strength. However, this was not necessarily the case for Merciless Tyrant. As long as Chu Fengmian used the Human Emperor Jar, he might be able to kill Merciless Tyrant. However, the Human Emperor Jar could not be exposed in Martial Imperial City. The power of an extreme path immortal weapon was too unique. It was impossible to hide it. Chu Fengmian had to leave Martial Imperial City before he could use it. This short fight was just an interlude. Almost at the same time Chu Fengmian and Merciless Tyrant exchanged blows, the outcome of the battle in the arena was decided. Yi Tianjun defeated his opponent without any surprise and advanced to the finals. The next battle was the finals of this year's martial arts competition. The real number one of the younger generation in the northern region would be decided here. Chapter 687. The final battle, Chu Fengmian vs Yi Tianjun. The sky-reaching pavilion's old man slowly spoke from the spectator stands. His words were also an announcement that the finals of the martial battle conference had begun. Chu Fengmian's eyes lit up with a strange light. The battle had finally arrived. Chu Fengmian already knew that he and Yi Tianjun would have a battle sooner or later. Now, in the martial competition, in front of countless warriors of the northern region, the battle had finally arrived. Yi Tianjun had targeted Chu Fengmian many times when Chu Fengmian first entered the Northern Mang Academy. He had almost forced Chu Fengmian into a desperate situation several times. It was time to settle this grudge today. Chu Fengmian's figure moved. He leaped up and landed on the arena. Standing opposite him was Yi Tianjun. The two of them stood on the arena and looked at each other. Although they appeared to be calm, their eyes were filled with killing intent. Chu Fengmian wanted to kill Yi Tianjun, and Yi Tianjun also wanted to kill Chu Fengmian in front of everyone. Whether it was Chu Fengmian or Yi Tianjun, they were both super geniuses of the Northern Mang Academy. Neither of them wanted to be stepped on. Chu Fengmian, I didn't expect you to reach this step. Yi Tianjun looked at Chu Fengmian and suddenly said. Not long ago, you were still a newcomer of the Northern Mang Academy. It's indeed out of my expectation that you could reach this step in such a short time. However, the position of the strongest person in the northern region can only belong to me. If you obediently retreat now, you still have a chance to live. Otherwise, you will die today. Yi Tianjun said coldly. He was originally a rare genius of the Northern Mang Academy. With an innate divine body, he was like a moon surrounded by stars in the Northern Mang Academy. His saint faction could cover the sky in the Northern Mang Academy. It could be said that he was the strongest person among the Northern Mang Academy's disciples, an existence that everyone respected. However, he did not expect Chu Fengmian to appear. Now, he had vaguely stepped on his limelight. How could Yi Tianjun tolerate this? Today, in the martial competition, in front of countless Northern Region's disciples, he would kill Chu Fengmian. He wanted to tell everyone in the Northern Region that he was the number one of the younger generation in the Northern Region. Chu Fengmian, your luck is indeed not bad. You've obtained quite a number of opportunities. However, the treasures of Dragon Emperor Yan Gu and the inheritance of Saint Lord Bei Mang are not things that you deserve. Today, you've encountered them. It's the will of the heavens. Only I deserve all of these. Yi Tianjun laughed sinisterly. Don't worry. After you die, I will inherit all your opportunities. I will also take good care of your woman. You talk too much. Chu Fengmian said calmly. His expression was extremely calm, as if he wasn't nervous even when facing Yi Tianjun. Do you really think you can beat me? When we were at the Northern Sea Academy, you targeted me at every turn, but you never succeeded. You couldn't deal with me back then, and now, it's even more impossible. Chu Fengmian said calmly. Don't worry, I won't kill you. I'll suppress you, cripple your cultivation, and bring you back to the academy. The people of the Saint Party have done a lot of evil in the academy. I'm afraid many disciples will be interested in you. Chu Fengmian said casually. However, his words were as vicious as Yi Tianjun's. For a genius like Yi Tianjun, crippling his cultivation was more humiliating than killing him. Yi Tianjun had been targeting Chu Fengmian, and killing him wasn't enough. Chu Fengmian wanted him to be humiliated like buried heaven before killing him. Crippling Yi Tianjun's cultivation and bringing him back to the Northern Sea Academy would definitely make him suffer 10,000 times more than killing him. Damn it. You little bastard, it seems like you want to die. Do you really think I can't deal with you? Yi Tianjun's face was instantly filled with anger when he heard Chu Fengmian's words. His heart was burning with anger, and his face turned red. Waves of killing intent were undisguised on Yi Tianjun's body. He, Yi Tianjun, had always been the #1 cultivator of the Northern Mang Academy. Not to mention the disciples, even the elders and supreme elders had to behave in front of him. No one had ever dared to speak to him like this. Die! Waves of chaotic energy suddenly burst out from Yi Tianjun's body. The power of his chaotic divine body was fully displayed. This chaotic divine body was ranked in the top 10 among the innate divine bodies of heaven and earth. The power of the chaotic divine body burst out and condensed on Yi Tianjun's fist wind. He threw a punch at Chu Fengmian. The power of this punch was overbearing, and it fully displayed the power of the chaotic divine body. This punch caused chaos between heaven and earth. If some weaker martial artists were to feel the aura of this punch, their minds would be in a mess, let alone touch it. This punch was like a ferocious beast. It suddenly rushed out of its cage and roared at Chu Fengmian. Yi Tianjun's strength was much more terrifying than what he had displayed before. He had managed to gather such a level of power in an instant. Yi Tianjun was a domineering figure in the Northern Sea Academy, but he had never won first place on the list of top 100 talents in the Northern region. There had always been different opinions about his strength. Now that they saw Yi Tianjun's attack, they realized that Yi Tianjun was not weak. It wasn't that Yi Tianjun didn't have the strength to fight for first place, but that he had been hiding it all along. How could Yi Tianjun, who had the innate divine body, be so weak? Now that he was facing Chu Fengmian, Yi Tianjun did not hide his strength. What he released was extremely terrifying. Even if it was a casual attack, it would be a killing move in the eyes of countless people. Everyone looked at Chu Fengmian, wanting to see how Chu Fengmian would block this punch. If he was careless in blocking this punch, he might die. It was extremely dangerous. However, Chu Fengmian's face was surprisingly calm. Chu Fengmian's eyes were cold. His mind moved, and the bloodline of the ancient battle dragon suddenly surged in his body. In an instant, Chu Fengmian's body transformed into the appearance of the ancient war dragon. With a sudden claw attack, he charged towards the punch. Boom! In an instant, the fist and the claw collided violently in the air. The entire stage seemed to have started to tremble under the force of the collision. Chapter 688. The collision of the two spiritual energies was enough to shake the entire arena. Even some peak life and death realm martial artists would find it hard to move the restrictions on the stage. Chu Fengmian and Yi Tianjun's strength had almost surpassed the life and death realm. What was even more shocking was that Chu Fengmian and Yi Tianjun's realms were still at the peak of the divine power realm. Neither of them had passed the life and death tribulation. To reach their current strength without passing the life and death tribulation, their future was limitless. No matter who won this battle, the winner would become an absolute big shot in the North region in the future. While many people were thinking on the arena, the short exchange between the two of them had already ended. Both of their bodies were forced back several steps due to the power that erupted from their bodies. In this short exchange, the two's strength was equally matched. Yi Tianjun retreated a few steps and stabilized his body. His face revealed a bit of sarcasm. Very good. I didn't expect you to be able to withstand 30% of my strength. It seems that I still underestimated you. 30% of his strength? Hearing Yi Tianjun's words, the quiet spectator's stands immediately went into an uproar. The power of Yi Tianjun's punch just now was extremely terrifying in everyone's eyes. It was already incredible that Chu Fengmian could withstand it. But from Yi Tianjun's words, it was only 30% of Yi Tianjun's strength. 30% of his strength was already so terrifying. Then, how powerful was Yi Tianjun's true strength? Many of the warriors present realized that the reason Yi Tianjun was able to hold such a supreme position in the North Sea Academy, the #1 sect in the northern region, was because of nothing else. It was his strength. In a place like North Mang Academy, where geniuses were everywhere, he could be called a king. His strength was self-evident. Yi Tianjun might be the one who hid his strength the most. If this is only 30% of Yi Tianjun's strength, how can Chu Fengmian compete with him? Chu Fengmian had many fortuitous encounters, but so did Yi Tianjun. Not to mention, he has the innate godly body, which is invincible in the same realm. His talent also surpasses everyone. If this Chu Fengmian doesn't have any other tricks up his sleeve, I'm afraid he won't stand a chance against Yi Tianjun. In everyone's hearts, the scales of this battle had already tilted towards Yi Tianjun. Your strength is only SOSO. You do indeed have the qualifications to reach this step. However, it is your absolute misfortune to have met me. If you were to cultivate wholeheartedly for another 10 years, you might really be able to grow to the point where you can contend against me. Unfortunately, you won't have this opportunity. Yi Tianjun looked at Chu Fengmian and laughed. Brat, you won't be so lucky today. You won't be able to escape even if you want to. Today, you will definitely die. As he spoke, Yi Tianjun suddenly took a step forward. His aura rose once again. It was several times stronger than before. The 30% of his strength that he had said earlier was not a lie. The power that he had unleashed now was indeed much stronger than before. Yi Tianjun stepped forward abruptly, gathering the power of chaos on his fist as he punched out once more. The power of this punch was completely different from the previous one. The spiritual energy within this punch suddenly burst out from the stage and started to spread towards the surroundings. In an instant, this spiritual energy had turned into a long river of spiritual energy, a long river that was formed by the chaotic energy. This long river of chaos spread to every corner of the arena, leaving no blind spots to hide in. The spiritual energy in Yi Tianjun's punch was enough to form such a long river of chaos. Once a martial artist was caught in it, they would be constantly attacked by the power of chaos. The entire arena was sealed. There was no way to dodge at all. How strong must one's spiritual energy be to be able to do this? In this arena, there was no way to dodge this move. The only way to dodge it was if Chu Fengmian left the arena. However, once he left the arena, it meant that he had admitted defeat. With Chu Fengmian's personality, how could he do that? The long river of chaos. This is a powerful secret technique that Yi Tianjun created himself. Who knows how many experts have died in the hands of this move? Many martial artists recognized this move of Yi Tianjun's. Who knew how many experts had died when Yi Tianjun used this move outside? In this arena, there was no space to retreat. The power of this move was countless times more terrifying than outside. Using this move, it seems like Yi Tianjun doesn't intend to give Chu Fengmian any chance. Seeing how serious Yi Tianjun is, Chu Fengmian has no chance at all. Everyone looked at Chu Fengmian. Chu Fengmian seemed to have been forced into a desperate situation. Unless Chu Fengmian truly possessed the power to contend against the chaotic long river, Chu Fengmian would definitely be defeated by this attack. Sword. Facing the attack of the long river of chaos, Chu Fengmian's expression remained unchanged. He only uttered a single word. The ancestral dragon's supreme sword suddenly came out from his hand. The moment it came out, the tip of the sword slashed towards the long river of chaos. Hiss. The moment the tip of the sword appeared, it had the power to split the sky and earth. The sword light swept across and slashed towards the long river of chaos. Chu Fengmian's sword light tore a hole in the long river of chaos. In front of the long river of chaos that Yi Tianjun had condensed with all his strength, Chu Fengmian's sword light was able to tear a hole in it. Then, as the hole grew bigger and bigger, the long river of chaos was completely torn apart. The boundless chaotic energy within it was completely shattered and dissipated. Chu Fengmian stood in the same place without moving. He used his sword light to easily resist Yi Tianjun's full strength. How is this possible? The long river of chaos was torn apart by this person's sword light. Could it be that this person's swordsmanship hasn't reached its limit? This swordsmanship is so ancient. It should have been lost a long time ago. How does this person have it? Many people stood up when they saw Chu Fengmian tear the long river of chaos apart. The moment Yi Tianjun displayed his full strength, everyone thought that Chu Fengmian was already a dead man. No one thought that Chu Fengmian could actually contend against Yi Tianjun. Chu Fengmian's strength was indeed astonishing. Especially his swordsmanship, which was the best among the younger generation in the northern region. However, in the face of absolute power, even his swordsmanship should be destroyed. However, Chu Fengmian went against the current and tore the long river of chaos apart with his sword light. This result was simply the opposite of what everyone had expected. Chapter 689. Before this battle, none of the honorable martial artists present thought that someone could resist such a powerful force with just sword techniques. Yi Tianjun had indeed concealed his strength, but it did not mean that Chu Fengmian had shown his true strength. At least, this sword technique was more powerful than the one Chu Fengmian had used to defeat Feng Wuxin. Chu Fengmian was not the only one who had concealed his strength. Oh? Yi Tianjun's expression finally changed. He had thought that it would be easy for him to defeat Chu Fengmian with his true strength. Although Chu Fengmian's sword technique had surprised him, he did not take it seriously. In his opinion, his strength was enough to crush everything. No matter how strong Chu Fengmian's sword technique was, he could only crush him. He was surprised that Chu Fengmian's sword was able to break through his chaotic long river. However, Yi Tianjun was not an ordinary person. He quickly recovered and revealed the same cold smile as before. Well, Chu Fengmian, I have indeed underestimated you. However, no matter how strong your sword technique is, it is impossible for you to fight against me. Yi Tianjun grunted coldly. His body was like a sun, rising slowly in the middle of the arena. His body was emitting a strange glow. This light was none other than the purest spiritual energy. Balls of spiritual energy surrounded Yi Tianjun, making him look like a scorching sun. Let's see how many times you can break through my sword technique. If you have the guts, break through all my fist winds with your sword technique. Yi Tianjun sneered as he frantically gathered his spiritual energy. It was as if Yi Tianjun's body was swelling due to the boundless chaotic energy. In the next moment, Yi Tianjun's body suddenly split into 9 identical Yi Tianjuns. They weren't illusions, but the real Yi Tianjun. His chaotic energy had condensed into shadows, and each of them had the exact same power as Yi Tianjun. It was enough to say that each of the phantoms was the real Yi Tianjun. The 9 phantoms attacked at the same time. Suddenly, countless fist winds flew towards Chu Fengmian. The sky was filled with fist winds, and the entire arena was filled with fist winds. Now, 9 phantoms were formed at once. This meant that Yi Tianjun's strength had increased by 9 times. These countless fist winds seemed to be endless as they bombarded Chu Fengmian. If it was an ordinary warrior, they would never dare to do such a crazy thing. This was because doing so would consume an astronomical amount of spiritual energy every second. With their spiritual energy, they would not be able to support it. However, Yi Tianjun had the innate godly body. The strength of the innate godly body was reflected in his strength. Yi Tianjun's spiritual energy was dozens or even hundreds of times stronger than martial artists of the same realm. That was why he was able to use his spiritual power to bombard Chu Fengmian without restraint. If you don't show me your true strength, no matter how many fist winds you come at me. Chu Fengmian stood in place with a calm expression. He held the ancestral dragon supreme sword in his hand. Just as the fist winds were about to attack him, the sword in his hand moved. Chu Fengmian's sword seemed to move slowly and slash out, but in the blink of an eye, tens of thousands of sword auras appeared. Chu Fengmian's sword had slashed out countless times. His sword was simply too fast. It was so fast that no one could see how many times Chu Fengmian's sword had been unsheathed. The fist winds were constantly destroyed by Chu Fengmian's sword aura. In a breath's time, Yi Tianjun's fist winds were easily neutralized by Chu Fengmian. This kind of attack could not affect Chu Fengmian at all. Kill! At the same time, Chu Fengmian's body also moved at the moment when all the fist wind was dissolved. His body turned into a phantom. His speed was frighteningly fast. In almost an instant, he was in front of Yi Tianjun. Chu Fengmian's sword flashed and slashed at one of Yi Tianjun. Hiss! Chu Fengmian slashed Yi Tianjun's chest and shattered it. Apparently, Chu Fengmian had killed one of the phantoms. Yi Tianjun did not expect this sudden attack. He was so shocked that he broke out in a cold sweat. The speed at which Chu Fengmian's figure and sword slashed was really too fast. He did not even have time to react. Fortunately, Chu Fengmian had only killed one of his phantoms. If Chu Fengmian had killed his real body, he would have been seriously injured even if he did not die. Each of the phantoms represented Yi Tianjun's true strength. Chu Fengmian could easily kill one of the phantoms, which meant that he could kill Yi Tianjun's real body if he wanted to. What kind of power did he have to kill Yi Tianjun with one slash? No one dared to imagine how powerful Chu Fengmian was. Chu Fengmian, it seems that I have underestimated you. Your strength is enough to make me serious. Yi Tianjun looked at Chu Fengmian and suddenly said, I did not intend to use my full strength to deal with you. You should be proud that you made me use my full strength. You are indeed powerful, but you still have no chance of winning in front of me. Now, I will show you the true strength of the divine body of chaos and let you understand the difference between a genius and an ordinary person. As Yi Tianjun spoke, a surge of spiritual energy began to stir within his body. Chu Fengmian could see that this was a seed contained in Yi Tianjun's divine body. It was the seed of chaos. However, it was different from the seed of chaos of the disciples of the sacred faction. This seed of chaos was condensed by Yi Tianjun's divine body of chaos. Like the natal sword origin in Chu Fengmian's body, it represented his greatest strength. Boom! As Yi Tianjun activated the power of the seed of chaos, the aura around him was completely different from before. A huge phantom shrouded Yi Tianjun's back. This phantoms looked extremely chaotic. Some martial artists who saw this phantom seemed to have gone crazy. From this phantoms, a huge pressure suddenly shrouded the area like a domain. The entire arena had turned into a domain of chaos. Chu Fengmian was shrouded in it. His every move was greatly restricted. Any action would require him to use dozens of times more strength. You're tuning into the Mythic Realms YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.